opportunities. Miss Caterina Seretti, Knowledge and Innovation Communities. Mr. Antonio Castillo will present Innofin activities, and Miss Rus Friedel, Sme Instrument. I offer the first speech to Miss Ruf Friedel, Manager of SME and Access to Risk Finance, Israel Innovation Authority.
This presentation, thank you, will be a short introduction to this sub-program in Horizon 2020, which is a great opportunity for associated countries. At least in Israel, it's very popular, this sub-program, because this is a program in which an SME can submit a proposal alone. Usually consortiums, it's hard to do partner search, to find partners for a consortium. An SME, it's a new opportunity since 2014 in Horizon 2020 that an SME can submit alone a proposal. So it's a very good tool for associated countries, and in Israel I'm in the NCP team of SMEs and risk and access to risk finance, so I deal with this sub-program. So the SME instrument, we will discuss shortly what is this sub-program in Horizon, what are the future changes in 2018 to 2020. Now the new work program is in discussions. Nothing is formally finalized, but things are going to change. And a few tips and tricks, general ones, how to submit a successful proposal. Really only a taste, of course, because it's an art how to submit a successful proposal. So what is the SME instrument? First, it's of course an innovation funding mechanism for, this is a ASME source, high growth, highly innovative SMEs. SME, according to the EU definition, is a company that is under 250 employees, and the turnover is less than 50 million euros, with global ambitions that want to disrupt the established value networks and existing markets. These are big words, but the SME instrument is intended for companies, SMEs that conduct R&D, they are very innovative, that they want to grow, that they want to export outside their country. Even I think words like the next Google, the next Facebook, the next unicorn, the next big company that is going to begin as, of course, a small company, that's what the SME instrument is intended for. Very, very ambitious SMEs that are in the beginning of their professional career as a company, as a young company, and they need this funding, this step, this some money to make their big exit. It's a good sign if your company is based in an innovation hub, has received grants or venture capital funding. Of course, when the EU would give funding in the SME instrument, it's always nice to see that someone else already believes in you. If you have some funding already from a VC, from an angel, if you have an intention letter of a big European company that wants to work with you or invest in you, of course it helps. This is the checklist to have before applying for an SME that wants to apply for the SME instrument. Of course, these sources are ASME sources, the European Agency for Small to Medium-Sized Enterprises. This is from their last leaflet. So SMEs that are applying for this program should be close to market. This is very important. The SME instrument is not a program that is intended to two guys in a garage that have a great idea. It's not, I mean, in Israel we have a program exactly for that, for great ideas, but this SME instrument is not for that. It's not a tool for company creation, it's more a tool for product creation. So close to market means TRL 6. TRL is technology readiness level. It's like there are 9 steps according to the European way of measuring the readiness of your product, and TRL 6 is almost reaching commercialization, almost reaching the market, because there are 9 steps. 1 to 6 is the concept and the first proving of the concepts, and TRL 6 is already checking it in a prototype in its environment. So you should already have first proof or prototype that your product is worth something, and also letters of intention that big companies would want to work with you also helps. So very important is close to market commercialization. So it's not for, I mean, it can be for startups, but the product has to be in TRL 6, almost in ready for commercialization. Across borders, of course, it's for SMEs that want to think globally, mostly, of course, with the European dimension. When SMEs come to me and ask me how to submit a successful proposal, we always talk about the market they want to of course, export to, or the market that they are thinking that the product would fit into. If they think only about Israel, of course, EU evaluators would not be impressed. So associated countries should do their market analysis and risk assessment about the European market. Think globally. In Europe, high growth. This is for very ambitious SMEs. Even if there are 6 people, they should have a plan of how they are growing to double themselves and be 20 and 30 people. Disruptive, it's for super innovative SME that wants to, according to the Commission's words, open new markets, disrupt the market. So it's supposed to be very innovative. Not so innovative solutions are not ranked high. Scalable also, of course, growing up, and the company would be able to deal with the growth, and with a prototype, which is again relating to close to market. There are 3 phases to the SME instrument. Mainly there are 2. The SME instrument is an open call with 4 cutoff dates per year for each phase. Meaning it's consortiums, as you may know, there are calls that can be open for a few months in a year, and sometimes the company comes and they have to wait many months in order to apply. The SME instrument is not that way. There are 4 calls in a year, so I mean you don't have to wait too many months in order to apply. And you can apply in 2 ways. Phase 1 is a concept and feasibility study. It is a grant of 50,000 euros that is meant for you to complete a certain hole in your feasibility study, may it be technical or economic, that you have a great product, you have a prototype, but you need to finalize your market analysis, you need to finalize your feasibility study of how you are going to market it in Europe. And for this, a small company, 50,000 euros would be enough to complete this whole in the feasibility study. That's how we present it, at least to Israeli SMEs. So this is the phase 1, from idea to concept. It's doing homework. At the end, you hand in a feasibility study to the Commission. And the results are very fast, because an SME needs to know very fast if it gets the money or not. It's not a big company that can wait months and months till it knows if it wins or doesn't win the funding. It needs it fast. So you get results very fast. You get results in 2 months and funding in 4 months. Even in the last cutoff, it was after 1 month that the companies already knew phase 1 if they won or not. Because of course their life, I mean, the company's life depends on this funding. So this is phase 1, small and modest relatively. Phase 2 is the big money for the SME. It's for a ripe R&D project. It's for really jumping from TRL 6 to TRL 9. You, in the phase 2 money, that is about €500,000 to €2.5 million. You're supposed to, this is the range. You're supposed to ask for the appropriate money that you need in order to finalize your product and bring it to commercialization. So this is the big money intended really after you've done your homework in phase 1. You don't have to apply first to phase 1 and then to phase 2 if you already have your market analysis. But phase 2 is intended for companies who already have done their homework. They know how they are going to market the product and where. They have a valid business plan, and they need the money in order to take the prototype to TRL9, to scale up, to get into mass production. So phase 2 is written here. It's demonstration, market replication, R&D, product development, really R&D activities to take the product into the market, not homework or writing like phase 1. That's the difference. So concept to market maturity. The EU may contribute 70% of total project cost, between €500,000 and €2.5 million. Also, the results here are received quite quickly. You get results, you know, if you get the money or not in 4 months. You sign a grant agreement and you get the funding and begin the project for 8 months. It's not written here. Phase 1 is intended to be a project of about 3 months to 9 months. And phase 2 can be project between a year, 2 years, even more. So in about 2 years, 2.5 years, you're supposed to begin to market your product. These are the 2 main phases that companies apply to. Phase 3 is the kind of supporting the companies in the 2 other phases, in phase 1 and phase 2. It's written here not as phase 3, but as business support for market launch. Every winner of phase 1 or phase 2 doesn't win only the grant and the money, but also is entitled for business coaching activities. So that means that after you win phase 1, you get a European experienced coach or an Israeli coach or coaches from other places. It doesn't have to be European. I mean, coaches can be from everywhere. So you get an experienced business coach for 3 days. And if you win phase 2, you get business coach services for 12 days. And the company is, of course, the one who decides what are the business challenges that they want to work with the coach. So it's intended for young companies. It's not only giving money, but it's really helping them to pass the valley of death, to address very specific business challenges that they have in order to market successfully their product. Of course, the goal here is that innovative, great products would enter the European market. Sometimes money is not enough. You also need an experienced business coach. So that's a uniqueness of this product, because the SMEs that apply here are usually not so experienced. Usually they need this guidance. So it's very helpful. And sometimes, like Israeli companies, they take European experienced coaches, which of course know the market much better than the Israelis. So it helps. How are their winners chosen? So, like other Horizon 2020 evaluation, the proposals are evaluated by a few evaluators here, 4 independent experts, on the basis of this 3 award criteria: excellence, impact, and implementation. Excellence checks the high innovation potential, that it's really innovative, disruptive solution. State of the art, the best. Why are you the best? Implementation, jumping, is that you are able to execute your idea. If you have a great idea and a prototype, but your team is made of a few incapable people, or a very brilliant professor but not a businessman and doesn't have a marketing team, he will not get a high grade maybe on implementation if it's the ability to carry it out. And now I'm in the middle, this is the most important, it's the impact. What is the impact of the product on the European market and on your company? How will it influence the growth of your company? The impact commercialization is the most significant part in the evaluation. Also today, and also in the changes that will come in 2018, it gets the highest rank in the grade. Now it is multiplied by 1.5 when the evaluators do the average of their ranking, and in the next work program it will have 50% of the grade. So the impact of your product and the impact on the company is the thing that is most important in the evaluation. It's a very important to have this in mind, because sometimes, at least Israeli companies, when they come, they have, wow, I have this great solution, and there's a crazy professor explaining to me the great solution, but if it's not a good business product, and if he doesn't know what will be the impact on the European market, it's not enough to win the SME instrument. It's important to have in mind, because of this impact, that evaluators think as investors, like venture capital, like business experts. There are 4 evaluators checking the proposal, as I said, and only one is supposed to be a technology expert. The others are supposed to be from finance, from business. They are supposed to be persuaded that your product would sell and have and will be successful in the European market and will make your company grow and would create more jobs in your company, etc. The program is becoming similar to a seed accelerator, meaning not only giving money for the product to be funded and get out to the European market, but also for the company to grow. It's very important. Sometimes companies in their proposals write how their product is great, but don't refer to how it will influence their own company, and then it will get a lesser grade. Why is it so attractive? First of all, it is applying a loan, which is in Horizon 2020 in the framework program. This is new. At least in Israel, unfortunately, we are still successful in when we submit things alone in ERC, in SME instruments. Finding partners in consortiums is hard, and when a company can submit a loan or proposal, this is. That's why it's very popular in Israel. So that's first of all. Second, it's equity-free funding. This is a grant. It goes to the company. The company doesn't have to pay back royalties. It's not a loan. It's free, easy money if your product is really as great as you believe in. And of course, the business coaching is also special here. World-class business innovation coaching and acceleration services. Also, the SME instrument works very closely with EEN that I was talking about before, the Enterprise Europe Network. After you win the SME instrument, not only you get business innovation coaches, but also you get help from the EEN to find more business partners, to open a profile, so you get much more than the money. Key figures up to now. This is quite new. This is only from 2014, only from Horizon 2020. So we don't have statistics that go backwards more than 2014. So this is from the last EASME report about the SME instrument that came out last month. So there are many statistic data there. I think that the most interesting would be the success rates. As you see here, the success rate of phase 1 would be 8.4, and the success rate of phase 2 would be 5.5. It's highly competitive, but it's SMEs who win, of course. It's very good money and very good step higher for commercialization. So these are the success rates. Sometimes, at least in Israel, we go up and down this success rate. It depends on the cutoff. There are 4 cutoffs that said in 1 year. Once we had a success rate in phase 1 of 18%. There were 70 Israeli companies applying, and 70 out of 70, 13 won phase 1, which is a lot. But in another cutoff in phase 2, there were 70 companies applying and 2 won. So it was a success rate of 2.6. It goes up and down, and there's a lot of frustration in SME instrument because, of course, highly competitive. But at least in Israel, we have this culture of submitting, resubmitting, and companies that win in the 6th or 7th time after they better their proposal. It's hard to fit in exactly in the first time. It's hard. We have like a company that won phase 2 after 3-4 times with working with a consultant, because it's not only that your product has to be great, but also the proposal you write has to be great. The presenting of it, the evaluators have a checklist how they evaluate the product. You have to really fit in to their criteria. So it's an art of how to write it. The average grant of phase 2 project is 1.6. When a company asks for funding, it has to be reasonable, of course. Don't ask for more than what you need to take your product into the market. So as we said, the range would be till 2.5 million euros. The average would be 1.6 for the grant. And for phase 2, 82% submitted by single companies. It is possible to submit with a consortium to SME instrument. 2 companies submitting together, maybe 3. It's possible, but most are submitting alone. Upcoming changes that will be probably applicable in the next work program, but what I'm presenting now is still in discussions, so it's not formally coming out, but almost for sure these changes will take place. There will be no more topics, bottom-up approach. Till now, the SME instrument was divided into 13 topics that almost covered everything. Maybe in medicine or medical devices it was a bit limited, but you had topics for everything, for space and for medicine and for transport and for ICT for health, almost everything. And every theme had a certain budget that was known in advance. But now it's going to change. There's going to be no more themes. You just apply with your proposal, and the best would win. Before, even if there were 3 very good medical devices applications and one space application which was not so good theoretically, space had a budget, so space would win one. Now they really want the best from the best, no matter what the theme would be. So no more topics are going to exist. And the review process in phase 2 is going to change. It's, till now we had only an evaluation of the written proposal. That's why it was really an art how to write it in a perfect way. Now it will contain 2 steps, evaluation of the written proposal and then an oral interview, only for phase 2. Some proposals that will pass the threshold, 13. Till now the threshold for phase 2 was 12, so it's going to get up. So a few proposals that will pass the threshold in the first written evaluation will proceed to the second stage of the oral interview. This interview will be conducted face-to-face in Brussels. Again, this is non-existent still. This is what's going to be in the future because it's highly competitive and the Commission wants to make sure it really chooses the best companies. And the interviews will be done in descending order from the highest mark to the lowest, and the interviews will evaluate the commercialization strategy, feasibility, and the team. Again, looking at the companies a bit as investors, as VCs, as do I believe that this product would sell and create growth. This is the perspective of this program. The grade. So impact, as I said, 50%, most important. Excellence, which evaluates the innovation, would be 25%, and implementation, 25% of the evaluation. This is a small change of how the grade is done today. Probably there will be a new portal for the program. It's a technical change. Maybe it will move from the participant program to another administrative umbrella, the EIC, but that's technical. And coaching will be optional. First it was optional, then it was obligatory, and now probably it will be optional again. A company can choose not to take it, but I don't understand which company would choose that. Just really a few tips and tricks. Again, this is an EASME source, the Executive Agency for Small to Medium-Sized Enterprises of the Commission. So these are a few tips and tricks how to make a not successful proposal. The first one is written here: too much focused on the project and not enough on the business opportunity. Again, at least in Israel, we have this tendency of companies being too technological, very, I mean, of course, writing a lot professionally about the technology and not enough on the business opportunity, but SME instrument is about business. It's about selling your very innovative product. So if you are intending it to be read by an engineer, you got it wrong. You are writing it for business experts, mostly, of course, not only. Not convincing when describing the company. You have to explain why your company will succeed and not your competitor. At least in Israel, sometimes companies come to me and say, I have no competitors, I'm the best, and I'm the only one, and that's of course not persuasive. You always have competitors, there are always alternative solutions, and you have to show why you will be the one that will be big, and why you are the first to succeed. And you have to describe your team, your company, like coming to a VC, to an angel, to an investor. They need to be persuaded that you are able to execute your plan. Not providing enough information on competing solutions, from talking to a few evaluators, that's what they say is one of the biggest mistakes. Companies sometimes are arrogant or just don't do their homework enough on other alternative solutions. Having a too low level of innovation, of course, planning to develop a product that already exists in the market, that even goes without saying. SME instrument is for the next Google, the next Facebook. That's a bit of exaggeration, but looking for very innovative solutions. 5, proposing just an idea without any concept for its commercialization. As we said, impact is most important, going to the market most important, commercialization, commercial is the most important, and just trying their luck, okay? Of course, SME instrument is not a lottery. A few words from our experience in Israel, general tips, business, at least here in SME instrument, that's the point. Form matters. Till now, we didn't have the interviews in phase 2, so it's evaluator sees the proposal and has to fall in love, and not too small letters, illustrations, make it easier for him to read, have a persuasive story. Evaluator has to fall in love with the proposal in 1 hour, 2 hours. And it's highly competitive and it's a lot of money. 2 hours and you get 2 million euros. Form matters, illustrations, tell a convincing story, emphasize the team, the capability to execute, be relevant in a European dimension, think global. This is for ambitious SMEs that want to get out of their local market. Don't focus too much on the technology. That's it. Already repeating myself, and that's it.
Thank you, Ruth. Questions?
Are they from Israel or from outside of Israel?
Evaluators can be also from Israel and also from outside. There is an open call to become evaluator. If you have the right experience from any associated country or EU member, you can apply to become an evaluator. So evaluators are or technology people or business people or finance people that applied, and they get the proposal. So it can be from any EU country or associated member country.
Ivan.
I'd like to ask you, related the changes that occurred regarding this interview. It will take place in Brussels. Who will cover costs, if we know? Thank you.
These are also questions that I'm asking myself. Unfortunately, someone from the Commission was supposed to give this presentation. I wish I would know. This is from talking about the changes in the work program, so I don't know yet. It's written that the interviews will be conducted in Brussels face-to-face, but I still don't know who will cover the costs and exactly how much time it will be. Only that it will be in Brussels and that these 3 things would be checked. I mean, the commercialization, visibility, and the team. But apart from that, technicalities, I don't know yet.
Well, maybe I can reply. This is easy. Well, the position of the Commission is that everything, that happens, before the grant agreement is at the proposer's own risk. Okay, so even the travel, I mean, from my experience, will be at the cost of the proposers.
Well, companies that won, we don't have any additional measures that we give them, but not money at least, but when an SME wins the SME instrument, it comes to ISERD, to our organization, first of all to choose a business coach. And then we help him choose the coach. And then we say, okay, if you're already in ISERD, why won't you maybe join consortiums? You already won once the Horizon 2020. Why not join consortiums? Why not open a profile in the EEN? Why not go to bilateral R&D? And then we catch him as a client, and because he's already successful. So we try to offer him all the other services. But I know that other European countries, if an SME applied and was very successful, got a seal of excellence, so they offer him national money, but we don't do that.
More questions? Thank you, Ruth. Please take a seat. Now we invite Mr. Antonio Castillo, head of the European Investment Bank representative in Chişinau, for presentation of Innofin opportunities and activities.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, honorable guests and speakers. I would like to introduce how the EIB Group can support innovation in Moldova. Innofin, EU Finance for Innovation, is a joint initiative launched by the EIB Group in cooperation with the European Commission under the Horizon 2020. Innofin consists of a series of integrated and complementary financial tools and advisory service offered by the EIB Group, covering the entire value chain of research and innovation, in order to support investments from the smallest to the largest enterprise. Innovation is a key financial support mechanism for driving sustainable growth, creating jobs, and ensuring Europe's long-term competitiveness. That is how the EIB Group and the European Commission have made it a top priority to facilitate access to finance for innovative business in Europe. One of the key factors constraining the implementation of research and investigation activities is the lack of available financing at acceptable terms to innovative business, since this type of companies or projects deal with complex products and technologies, unproven markets and intangible assets. Innofin is designed to fill this gap. Innofin builds on the success of the former risk-sharing facility, developed under the 7th EU Framework Programme for Research and Technological Development. During the 2007-2013 programming period, the risk-sharing finance facility financed 114 RDA projects to the tune of euro 11.3 billion and signed 29 warranty contracts with a total warranty amount signed of over 1.4 billion, which represents a portfolio of 3 billion due to the leverage increase. Under the new 2014-2020 programming period, Innofin is available across all eligible sectors in EU member states and associated countries. The EU Group aims to more than double its combined support to innovative firms in Europe. Innofin financing tools cover a wide range of loans and warranties, which can be tailor-made to innovators' needs. They are provided either directly or indirectly via financial intermediaries. Innofin has been developed in such a way to provide a series of integrated and complementary financing tools. With EIB support, we help to catalyze investments through a product offering mix between lending, blending, and advertisement. Lending of loans at favorable conditions, warranties, and equity participations. Blending at higher risk projects combining with EU financing with EU budget. And advertisement to prepare, evaluate, and support implementation of projects, and the support of public and private partnerships. EU support has been designed in order to split efforts between the EIB, which is invest in mid-caps and large caps and thematic finance, and the EIF, which is support early stage or enterprise and SMEs. Overall, EIB and EIF together are expected to make over 24 billion euros of debt and equity financing available to innovative companies to support more or less the double of final investments in R&I during the period 2014-2020. What is the European Investment Fund? It's part of the EIB group. Roughly 10% of the group's activity is channeled through the EIF. The EIF is with Innofin support as it provides risk financing to stimulate entrepreneurship and innovation. It consolidates within the EIB group, but a significant portion is owned by the European Commission, a AAA institution with a strong capital base. It has an experience on SME support of over 20 years. Since 2007, the Innofin support has been around 4.8 billion and has spread through Europe with 112 applications, mostly through direct loans. This has resulted in 116 warranty contracts and has our support has gone to over 38 countries. In Moldova, since last year that we started with the Innofin product, we have signed 2 agreements with Mobius Bank and ProCredit. With Mobius Bank, we have signed a line to warranty a portfolio of 15 million euros, which the EIF will warranty the risk on 7.5, on half of the portfolio. With ProCredit, we have signed a loan for a portfolio of 20 million, where the EIF will warranty 10 million. During 2017, we expect to sign another 3 lines with local financial intermediaries for a total portfolio of 15 million euros, of which 25 will be covered by the EIF warranty. The mechanism is very simple. It's a simple concept that has made the key of its success. The EIF warranties against a fee 50% of the SME risk for financial intermediaries for a new portfolio of innovative lending. We consider that it's a win-to-win facility, both for banks, financial intermediaries, and beneficiaries. The benefits for financial intermediaries are that we provide uncapped warranty. And this warranty is unconditional and irrevocable. And it covers 50% of a portfolio of new loans. The financial intermediary obtains a AAA warranty from a multilateral development institution with 0% risk capital allocation. The bank will not need to price the expected loss or the cost of capital on the warranty part. This has to be replaced by the cost of the warranty. Okay? Therefore, the profit margin will remain unchanged, which implies doubling the return on equity, because for the same profits, he needs half of the capital consumption requirements. Also, for financial institutions, the price will be reduced because making the product more competitive in the market. For financial beneficiaries, they will have a cheaper pricing, a cheaper cost of funding, and perhaps they will reduce the collateral requirements with the financial intermediaries. They can benefit of longer terms with longer grace periods. How does the Innofin SME warranty works? As mentioned before, against a fee, 50% of the SME risk of financial intermediaries will be covered by the warranty for a new portfolio of innovative lending. The portfolio has to be generated within 2 to 3 years. Attractive terms and favorable capital treatments due to the warranty of a AAA institutions will be applied. We expect to target over 10 billion of financing to benefit innovative SMEs and small mid-caps over the next 6 years. While the cost of funding, the fixed cost, and the margin remains the same, the cost of risk on the warranty part of the loan with Innofin is reduced to the warranty cost. So it's at the end, as mentioned before, is a lower price for final beneficiaries. As previously mentioned, the EIB also supports innovative SMEs, not only the EIF. As a different from the EIF, the EIB is owned by member states of the European Union, although is not dependent on EU budget. We raise long-term funds in the international capital markets to manage our liquidity requirements. We are also a AAA rated institution that passes the lending borrowing conditions to the borrowers. As today, EIB Innofin products target to innovative large capital, mid-caps, and thematic finance through corporate lending. An improved product line is in the process of being developed, aiming especially at funding the gap of RDI investments in moderate and modest innovators in relation to the EU Innovative Scoreboard and the Horizon 2020 associated countries such as Moldova. The product to be unveiled in the coming weeks will increase the supply of loans and other type of financing for RDI-driven enterprises and infrastructures, as well as innovation enabling infrastructures of MMAs and associated countries. How does the mid-cap warranty works? It covers 50% of loss coverage for new mid-cap loans and up to 500 million investments. Pari passu sharing risk with financial institutions, full delegation of all the administration to financial intermediaries, favorable capital treatment is also expected from local authorities because of the AAA rating and the long amortization periods. But I don't want to get more into detail into these products because, as I mentioned before, it's going to be modified within the next weeks. The EIB also provides a range of technical assistance and advisory services in order to help project promoters to make research, development, and innovation of bankable projects. Through this product, we enable maximum access to finance for innovative projects by improving the bankability and investment readiness and enable faster access to finance. We try to focus on improving the framework conditions for financing, developing business cases for new financing mechanisms in RDI sectors, and finally, preparing studies for increasing effectiveness of financial instruments to address specific sector RDI policy objectives. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for presentation. Questions, please.
Yes?
My question is, you mentioned that during last years it was signed more than 100 contracts, yeah, with all over Europe.
Yes.
Have you any figures about how many applications had this organization, this fund, this bank from EAP countries?
EAP, no. I don't have any information. I only have from Moldova. In Moldova, we have already signed 2 lines, as mentioned, with Movia's Bank and ProCredit, one of 15 million portfolio, another one of 10, of which we cover 50% of the risk.
Thank you.
As far as I understood, you are dealing with intermediaries yourself as European Investment Bank. But here in Moldova, do you have any idea which were the final beneficiaries? Any examples of what kind of SMEs benefited from these portfolios? Just a rough idea?
For the moment, I don't have any figures with me. I apologize for not bringing. Also, but no, for the moment I don't. I did not have time to look at those projects. Also, the product started only last year. Okay, I don't know how much of these lines have already been utilized, but they have been utilized, and also with some of them might be already completed, because we might be signing with an additional line with some of these institutions.
More questions? So no. Thank you very much for presentation. Now we invite Ms. Caterina Siretti, second international expert, policy support stakeholders relations, AIT, with presentation on knowledge and innovation communities.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Caterina Siretti. As you already heard, I'm here to talk to you about the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, EIT, and our knowledge and innovation communities, and the most important collaboration opportunities with our community. So, the EIT is an EU body established in 2008. Our base is in Budapest, but as you will see, we have offices across Europe. We're the first EU initiative bringing together actors from business, higher education and research, leading actors, and with the aim to boost innovation entrepreneurship and tackle societal challenges. As an example about on talking on leading actors, you heard yesterday from my colleague from Leuven University that according to Reuters, they were the #1 innovative university. But if you see the whole list, the first 10 innovative universities are all partners in our innovation communities. So EIT is an integral part of Horizon 2020 since 2014, with a total budget of 2.4 billion. We work through our knowledge innovation communities, which are pan-European partnerships of the actors from, as I said, business, higher education and research, what we call knowledge triangle. We work by enhancing collaboration between these sectors, trying to bring products faster into market, train people with entrepreneurial mindset and innovative mindset also. And currently we have 6 innovation communities, as you will see, in 6 different thematic challenges. This is climate action, climate change, digital transformation, sustainable energy, raw materials, health, active aging and well-being, and EIT food. The first 3 kicks in climate, digital and energy were established in 2009. Currently they are in became operational in 2010, so they are currently in their 7th year of operations. In 2014 we had a new call for the new KICs in raw materials and health, and since 2016, November 2016, we also have a new KIC in EIT food, which is currently in a startup phase. So our priorities for the current programming period. First of all, as mentioned, we have the first 3 KICs. We want to foster the growth and impact of our first innovation communities. Our second priority is to create new innovation communities. As mentioned, we have EIT Health, Raw Materials and Food, but in 2018 we will have a new call for 2 new KICs in advanced manufacturing and urban mobility. Apart from that, we also have as priority, important priority, to disseminate and share good practices of our innovation communities, working in the knowledge triangle. And part of it is also working with the regional innovation scheme, which I will analyze later. But this is an outreach scheme working in countries that do not directly benefit from the KICs. So, as mentioned before, we are spread across Europe, and this is an example just to say that apart from the EIT headquarters in Budapest, each KIC of the 6 KICs, apart from their headquarters, they all have 5 to 8 regional offices, regional innovation hubs, what we call co-location centers. Just giving a short description about what is an innovation community, because I understand that this might be quite different than what you already heard about Horizon. So, first of all, KICs are designated according to a call in a very competitive procedure. After the designation, they are an autonomous and flexible institute. They have to become a legal entity. They decide what kind of legal entity they will have and where they will have their co-location centers, their headquarters, something that is assessed, of course, by us and external experts of the GRTD. They have a business mindset, as I mentioned. They have a CEO and a flexible management team working centrally, but also in the co-location center, the regional level. Something different than other Horizon projects is that the KICs are created with a long-term approach. They set up for a minimum of 7 years with the objective to become eventually financially sustainable. Well, I mentioned that we have a budget of 2.4 billion. This budget goes mainly in our operational arm, the innovation communities, but we only contribute with 20% of the annual budget in each KIC. The rest, 75%, has to be attracted from other sources of public or private funding. That could be fees from members, that could be, as you will see, we have some education activities, fees from students, but also participating in startups, equity, and other sources. I mentioned about the co-location model, and well, something else that is also important, KICs are evaluated based on an annual business plan, and they receive annually their funding. So this is quite competitive because every year they have to prove that they're really worth, they deliver the impact that they're supposed to deliver. So just to explain a bit the concept of our innovation model, which is the knowledge triangle integration. We start from the 3 functions, business, education, research, bring together actors from mainly from these 3 areas. What we do is work in activities relevant to these 3 functions, which are business creation activities, incubators, accelerators, access to finance. Each KIC has an excellent network of investors. Working in education activities, our partners have developed education programs, master and PhD mainly, professional learning as also MOOCs, under the umbrella of the EIT label. This is a quality seal that EIT gives to its partners under an official assessment every year. We also have the innovation-driven research activities. Well, this is research, but research-based innovation. This is it's different from KIC to KIC, but this is mainly supporting innovation projects, providing expertise in managing complex projects, intellectual property, early adopters, finding first customers, and all these activities might be quite challenging for an innovation project. In the heart of our activities, we have entrepreneurship. And these are some of the outcomes, which is graduate with entrepreneurial talent and innovative mindset, the creation and support of startups and spin-offs, as well as new product services and business models that through the collaboration of these three sides of the knowledge triangle will be delivered in the market in a faster way. So in this way, we also contribute in our objectives and the Horizon 2020 objectives, that is contributing to the growth and competitiveness of Europe, creating more jobs, and of course enhancing the innovation capabilities of across Europe. So giving some examples from the first three innovation communities in climate, digital, and energy, these are some of the first outcomes. In green letters, you will see the figures since September 2016, the validated figures. And in blue, you will see what was the same numbers in November 2015. So you can see the number of graduates from our master and PhD programs mainly. You will see the number of startups created and supported, number of business ideas incubated, improved products. This is only for the first three kicks. Something else that is also important and shows the diversity of the innovation communities. We currently have, for the first five innovation communities, more than 800 partners. Well, almost 50% of them comes from the business sector, which is large enterprises as also SMEs. We also have partners from higher education, research, cities, regions, and NGOs. But you will see that from kick to kick, the mixture of partners is different, and this has to do with the sector itself, with the challenge they have to face. For example, you will see that in climate kick, you have a bigger contribution by cities and regions. It's the challenge itself that requires more active involvement. And another figure just to show where do key partners come from. These are countries that are EU member states, but not only. And I think that you will see that there is something missing there. These are, of course, countries that are associated to Horizon, but also some EU member states from the south. This was actually the reason that we launched in 2014. And this takes me to my next topic that might be of your interest, the EIT Regional Innovation Scheme. As I mentioned, the EIT has as a mission to enhance innovation capacity across Europe, but we don't want to do this only with the excellent actors, which of course is the main objective of Horizon 2020. We want to do it by working also with moderate and modest innovators. So in 2014, we launched the EIT Regional Innovation Scheme. We are actually in the third year of implementation of EIT RIS activities. We work with moderate and modest innovators, member states and Horizon 2020 associated countries, according to the European Innovation Scoreboard. The aim is to share and transfer good practices of knowledge and integration and, of course, widen participation in EIT KIC activities. This is a twofold objective, trying to show that if you want, well, I heard yesterday from Israel and Turkey mainly that there are some closed clubs in Europe. That could be the ETPs, JPIs. Sometimes we hear that also about the KICs. But it's also important to make clear that it's not the only way to become a KIC partner in working with the KICs. You also can participate in other accelerators, in education projects. You can receive support. These are open calls. And of course, I have following some ideas about the EIT RIS activities. Something else that is also a distinguishing feature for the EIT RIS, it is that it has been designed in a way that allows for synergies with smart specialization strategies. Well, this hasn't been realized until now, but we're working closely with the Joint Research Center of the Commission to approach regions and countries according to with the driver, their smart specialization strategies. So this is, I think, also important for you. These are the eligible countries for the EIT Regional Innovation Scheme. You will see from number 18 until 26 that participants from this conference are also eligible for this scheme. So the ETRIS, after the first 3 years of implementation, something first to mention that is quite important. This scheme is a voluntary scheme. So since KICs need to be financially sustainable and they are autonomous, they are also autonomous to decide if they want to work with ETRIS eligible countries or not. They are also autonomous to design the activities that they want to implement there. However, even though it is a voluntary scheme, all 5 KICs explore opportunities in 17 countries out of 26, if I recall well, that are ETRIS eligible. Different kind of activities, of course, because there are different needs from KIC to KIC and also different needs from country to country. EIT Food, which is our newly designated KIC, will integrate the ETRIS in their approach from the very beginning, and this is based on lessons learned from our previous experience. That was a very clear criterion during the evaluation of their proposal, and so it seems that this will work very, very good. Something else which also is important is that ETRIS didn't have any dedicated funding for the first year of implementation, that was 2015. But we understood that in order to make it easier and facilitate the implementation of activities in RIS-eligible countries, we should also allocate some funding. So for 2016, a total number of 7 million euro was allocated for ETRIS activities, and that was mainly from the first 3 KICs, climate, digital, and energy. But in 2017, we believe that this will reach about 13 million euros. For the next 3 years, 18 to 20, since we have a new guidance note for the implementation of the project, of the program, we have raised the available funding from 1.5 million to 4 million per KIC. So this is up to the KICs to decide what strategies they want to have and which countries they want to select so that they can spend this money. And these are some example activities for ETRIS. So the first and very, very basic one is information and awareness raising. What we do is organize with local stakeholders the ET Awareness Day. This is a very first step that we go there in collaboration with a public authority national institute, and we bring our KICs together. We talk about the collaboration opportunities, who we are, what we do, and how can actors participate in our activities. We currently have planned one awareness day in Israel in July. We had one in Ukraine this year. And, well, I invite you, if you feel interested in organizing something like that, please feel free to contact me, because we are also interested to raise awareness and talk to you, talk to your companies, to your research institutes, and see how we could work together. Some other examples that are different from KIC to KIC is acceleration workshops and boot camps. This is to prepare startups and SMEs to participate in our acceleration activities. This is supporting access to finance and entering new markets. An example is from ET Digital. There is a program called Open Hours. So it's a 30 minutes interview from a video conference with an excellent team of financial advisors. The SME or startup in general, they pitch, they present the proposal, the innovative idea, and if it is relevant to the KIC's priorities, then they can directly work with the KIC. They can receive support either in the form of funding or in services. Another activity is startup competitions and awards, summer schools and master schools in collaboration with universities from EIT-RIS countries or with our partners, professional training and sponsored internships, workshops on good practice methodologies and ideation. This is also from Climate KIC. And of course, if you feel that this is something that you will need, providing expertise and know-how to national and regional authorities, but based on knowledge triangle integration, which is how you can bring together your actors from these three sides of the knowledge triangle: business, education, and research. How you can make them work better together? Because, well, I think that you have faced the fact that you have an excellent researcher with an excellent innovative idea, but he creates a product that is not something that could be of demand. So you also need an SME to discuss, to bring it easier to the market, just as an example. And since theory is always good, but practice and practical examples are always better, this is just to present some of our success stories this year. The list of Forbes 30 under 30 has been published, and 22 EIT innovators, if I may say it like that, are part of the list. This has been tripled since 2016, and we are very, very proud for this success. But you will also see Mrs. Kristina Tsvetanova being awarded with the EU Rise Innovator Prize by the Commissioner, and if I am not mistaken, she's from Ukraine. So this is also another example that we are open, our activities are open for individuals, as also companies and other actors from your countries. So thank you very much for your attention. I will be more than happy to answer questions now or later.
Thank you for presentation. Questions, please. Oh, it's clear in your presentation.
Very clear.
Just a short question about your collaboration with GRC on smart specialization, because some countries here are working currently on let's say, preparing the EDP process. So I would like to find out more about how can you be involved in this, in all these activities, because knowledge triangle, it's at the basis, at the foundation of smart specialization, let's say.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Well, the concept of knowledge triangle integration is very similar to the EDP, the entrepreneurial discovery process, because it has to do, for smart specialization, with mobilizing local actors, identifying strengths, opportunities, what you need to do. And this is quite similar with the knowledge triangle integration in a kind of different way. So we already discussed with JRC, we had a workshop on regional development, a joint workshop in Seville in the end of March, and we discussed the potential of contributing also with some of our kicks. I already know that, for example, raw materials see some of the Eastern Partnership countries as priority countries because of their strategic objectives. I also know that Climate Kick already works. We discussed this with Victor, with the Chamber of Commerce in Serbia as their contact point for activities under EIT RIS. So there is potential, there is interest. I would be happy to discuss with you and JRC how we could be more actively involved in your EDP process. There's a microphone.
Thank you for the presentation. My question refers to, you mentioned about the master and post PhD courses. Are these courses only eligible for involved participating in this KIC countries or outside also, for example, from Eastern Partnership countries?
This is open for everyone, for Horizon Associate countries, for member states, but as all the PhD and master calls, they are competitive. So if your student has a background and what is required according to the process, will be eligible.
Thank you.
What is missing, I guess, is being able to be informed about these calls, either for accelerators or for master PhDs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Katerina, for the excellent presentation. Could you just give us some concrete suggestions how to utilize better this regional innovation scheme? I mean, representatives of those countries that still are not in and do not use these opportunities on the proper way.
Of course. Well, first I would start from the very, very basic, that you as national authorities working in innovation or sciences, you should be sure about your engagement in working in this area. And I say that because there are many times that we have interested SMEs, interested education institutes, but they don't have the support from the national authorities. And as we all understand, policy making and removing barriers and the process is always important. This is just the framework. I would suggest as a first part, contact us, ask us to join you and co-organize with you an awareness date so that we can get together and meet in physical presence. This is always different than, just having a presentation or showing this presentation from away. We can discuss it with you and see how this could work. There you will also have representatives from the KICs, people working in the field, and this is also very, very important. And then you will see that things will just go very, very easy. Either it's a kind of matchmaking event, because we try to tailor-made it according to the people that will participate. So from your side, you will only have to mobilize the relevant actors. But please, if you decide to do that, don't bring only scientists, don't bring only researchers. It will be only one part of the total picture, and you need to make the best out of it. So I would suggest to start from this. You will see here our website. Please visit it, and if you feel that you want to be more informed, subscribe to our newsletter, or please send me some information. I will try to send you back anything that has to do with open calls for your country.
Yes, I would like to continue a little on this last question, because certainly at the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, you set the framework for these regional innovation schemes. But the implementation will come from the individual KICs, or I'm wrong on that. Yes. So maybe you can make an awareness campaign, a workshop in a certain country at your level, at the level of EIT, but in fact the implementation will come either from the KIC climate or KIC health and so on. So is it that the right way? So from your side, you can only do a general awareness, but the initiative for something more specific will come from the individual KICs.
In a way, that is right, but just you need to remember that we are the ones writing the policy, providing the guidance, the strategic guidance for the KICs. So this is why I mentioned that you will also, if you go to our website, you will have a dedicated section on the EIT RIS. There you will see the new guidance note on implementation. This is a 20 pages document for the KICs, providing detailed guidance on how and where they should work. And the main two action lines for the next programming period is working through acceleration of the current activities they have, but the second is finding a local entity, a local champion, for the example of Serbia, the Chamber of Commerce. They will represent the KIC. They will be the entry point for the KIC, but also the entry point for the local actors. So this will be the EIT hub. And we'll try to, because the idea for the innovation communities is to create fertile innovation ecosystems. And you start by having a champion, a local champion that has the capacity to do that. And then you try to mobilize the whole network. So we will be happy to make general awareness days, but it's not our only role. Okay?
More questions? No, thank you very much
for the
presentation. Unfortunately, due to the technical reason, the presentation, open access and IPR will not be delivered. Then we propose Mr. Dmitry Tashkov to provide presentation on EU Strat. Mr. Tashkov is Associate Professor, Institute of Public Administration, Faculty of Governance and Global Affairs, Leiden University.
Thank you very much. I want to start by thanking the organizer for inviting me, and I'm afraid my presentation will be rather different from the ones we heard so far, because unfortunately I cannot offer you or explain details of programs for which you can apply and which can support institutes and enterprises in your countries. Rather, what I would want to do is actually solicit from you opinions and perhaps some input into how we can do our work, part of which is assessing the impact of scientific cooperation. As I'm going to explain, this is one part of our big project, and we are actually in the middle. We are just producing some reports which try to assess, to take stock of the impact, and not only the scientific but also the societal impact of scientific cooperation, in particular in Ukraine, Belarus, and Moldova. So I'm going to present to you some findings, preliminary findings, but what I would really want to achieve is to get some input from all of you into how we can do this thing better, or perhaps if we have examples or cases that we might include in our reports. My name is Dimitri Toshkov. I work at Leiden University in the new campus of Leiden University in the city of The Hague in the Faculty of Governance and Global Affairs. The project I want to present is called EUStrat, and this is an international project which is financed by the Horizon 2020 program. It started relatively recently, just last year. We are just completing our first year into the project, and we have 2 more years to go. It is a very, very broad project, and it's not focused on scientific cooperation as such. Now, the main ambition is to provide what we call an inside-out analysis and strategic assessment of the links between the EU and the Eastern Partnership countries. What we mean by inside-out analysis is, unlike existing literature, we don't try to assess the links between the EU and the Eastern Partnership countries from the point of view of the West, of the European Union, but we try to do that in a bottom-up fashion in which we take the local perspectives in the Eastern Partnership countries and see how they add up to understand the links between the EU and this region. So we have been asked to answer 2 main questions. First, why has the EU fallen short of creating peace, prosperity and stability in the Eastern neighborhood? The call for proposals came in 2015, and then in the middle of all the problems in the region, it was pretty clear that the objectives of the European neighborhood policy have not been met. So the EU and we as scientists are quite interested in assessing why this didn't happen. And second, what can the EU do, if anything, to actually promote these values in the region and to have to support successful transformations of these countries? As you can see, these are very broad questions, and they are questions that require expertise from political science, international relations, public administration, economics, history. So we have a very diverse consortium which has scientists working in all these fields. Myself, I'm a public administrationist, political scientist. So our consortium is co-coordinated by the Free University in Berlin and Leiden University. I want to emphasize that we're coordinating this project together. It's a rather interesting construction, but it proved to work very well in a previous FP7 funded project in which, with the same partner, we co-coordinated this project too. So just sharing the responsibilities and the administrative burden for coordinating the project seems to be like a very good idea. And since we got funded, I think also the Commission appreciated this little innovation, institutional innovation. Our consortium has mostly universities, some NGOs, and 1 company from Lithuania, and these cover member states from Western Europe, from Eastern Europe as well. We have partners in Poland, in Lithuania, from Switzerland as an associated member, and also from all 3 countries of the Eastern Partnership in the East. There was a project on the Caucasian region just finished previously, so our focus is on Ukraine, Belarus, and Moldova. All these 3 partners are think tanks, NGOs, and this is for a reason because we felt that, especially in the field of the social sciences and humanities, the traditional universities and Academy of Science centers did not offer expertise that we needed, and we preferred to get in touch with these NGOs, which are rather small, and they have also limited organizational capacity, but so far the cooperation works very well. What I also want to emphasize that actually our partners from these countries, some of them co-lead work packages. The package on scientific cooperation in particular is led by the Belarus organization, the School of Young Managers in Public Administration, or SIMPA. And because they are relatively inexperienced, another small institutional innovation we did in the project is to appoint co-leaders or shadow leaders of the work packages, which come from the Western partners who have more experience and which help the Eastern partners in leading these work packages. So again, this proves to be quite useful in dealing with the administrative burden of managing this project. So the project is divided into 8 work packages. The first one is management and the last one is dissemination, but in substantive terms, We try to map the social orders in these three countries, and this is a political science concept, social order, which comes from the work of Douglas North and co-authors. And basically the distinction is between closed and open social orders. And the idea is that it's a very difficult thing to achieve transition from a closed social order in which access to political office and to economic opportunity is very limited, to an open order in which these things, so democratic and prosperous society. So building on this theoretical work, we want to use it to map the countries we're interested in and to identify channels for possible transformation of these countries into open and prosperous democratic societies. We have a work package which deals with economic and social interdependencies and regime stability in the EAP countries. We have a work package which is more international relation focused on the strategies of the EU compared to other external actors such as Russia, Turkey, China, the US, so what are the different strategies towards the region. We have a work package which focuses on the so-called soft or normative power of Europe and of Russia, of the European Union and Russia. And what we do there is quite extensive media monitoring and also a set of survey experiments in which we try to identify what kind of messages just regular people in Moldova, Ukraine and Belarus receive about the EU, and perhaps what are the effects of different ways of presenting the EU and cooperation with Russia on the preferences of these people towards European integration and cooperation with Russia. But this is ongoing work and we are still collecting the data for that, also in Moldova, by the way. We have a work package on association agreements and also, last but not least, on scientific cooperation. So you might wonder, how does scientific cooperation fit into all that? And we certainly wondered a little bit when we were writing the project, because we knew that there is this extensive work being done in the EAP and EAP Plus projects. And at the same time, it was pretty clear in the actual description of the project, of the call for proposals, that the Commission was very interested in paying specific attention to scientific cooperation as one aspect of the perhaps soft or normative power of the European Union. So, citing from the call for proposals, it said that the project needs to address if and how scientific cooperation and the mobility of researchers can contribute to an increased understanding between the EU actors and the countries and people of the region, and to addressing societal challenges of shared concern. So this links up to the EU idea that scientific cooperation is, of course, about excellence and producing scientific output, but actually about more than that. And the EU hopes that scientific cooperation can be used as an instrument of scientific diplomacy. Or as one of the speakers yesterday said, that it can be an excellent bridge to bring people together. Of course, this sounds plausible and very nice, but the question is, does it actually work like that? Are there any spillovers from international scientific cooperation between the EU and the Eastern Partnership countries to broader societal processes rather than, strictly speaking, scientific impact? So, what do we do and what do we plan to do to address these objectives? In the work package, we have three main deliverables related to that. The first one is just a review of the institutional structures and programs for cooperation between the EU and these countries. And for most of you for whom this is just daily business, day-to-day work, it's probably obvious, but I have to tell you that for us it was very difficult to get oriented into the entire field and this ocean of acronyms and different programs related to each other in complex ways. So in this first working paper, we just tried to map these institutional structures and also to present an inventory of ongoing and completed projects with the participation of Moldovan, Ukrainian or Belarusian entities. This work has been delivered to the Commission. It is online. You can consult it on our website. We have three lists of projects that we have been able to identify with these countries. If we have missed some, please let us know and we'll be happy to update the files. What we also learned from this exercise is just the sheer scope of projects that are going on and that have been completed between the EU and the Eastern Partnership countries. I have to say personally I was quite surprised by the volume of projects, by the cooperation, and we find that it's actually quite comparable to the rates of cooperation and success of the new member state from Eastern Europe. So this was certainly a revelation for us, certainly not for you, but I think the broader public is definitely not aware of that. We also conducted a more critical review of the legacies, the impact of the Soviet, post-Soviet communist legacies on scientific policies in these countries. And one thing that we identify as a potential issue is the very strong role of the National Academy of Sciences in all these countries, which of course is also an asset, but comparatively speaking, universities in these countries are weak in research, while the National Academy of Sciences institutes are strong, which is great for the fields in which these institutes are strong, but it's not so great, first of all, for the linkages between research and education, and second, in the areas in which the Academy of Sciences just don't have strong research traditions. And this includes most of the social sciences, and that's one of the reasons why I think, although overall rates of participation are very high in the EU cooperation programs, when it comes to the social sciences and to the humanities, the rates are very low. So actually there are very few projects with Europe which are in the fields of social sciences, economics, political science, sociology, which have partners from these countries. I think we are one of the very, very few ones. And I also see by the composition in this room that most of the scientists here are from the hard sciences and not from the social sciences. So that work is complete. The second deliverable, which we are in the middle of completing, is assessing the impact, or attempting to assess the impact of these cooperation programs, not only on the scientific output, but also on broader society. And I'm going to tell you a little bit how we have done that so far and what we can do in the future. The last major deliverable will be linking all this to our theoretical background about open and limited social orders, and trying to see how the broader political environment constrains science and scientific cooperation, and on the other hand, whether scientific cooperation can actually do something to open up these closed social orders. So, about assessing the impact. We realized very early on that it's not a task that we can address in a very formal way. I love running regressions and I do that for my other work, but for this deliverable we decided that this too formal approach is not going to be justified given the data that we have and given the question that we have. So we decided to go for a mixed method approach. So what we are going to have is a pretty comprehensive overview of the scientific output of these countries. And I say comprehensive not in the sense of identifying everything, but having a comparable data across all these countries. I'm going to show you some preliminary results of that. But as a second step, what we did together with our partners is 2 sets of interviews with scientists and also project managers, coordinators, people who have been involved in scientific cooperation with these countries. And 1 set of interviews was conducted in the EU member states. So we identified around 10 scientific coordinators and scientists which were responsible for more than 20 projects involving these countries. And we used semi-structured interviews to get their insights into the possible impact, barriers, things like that. And then our partners did the same with institutions and people from Moldova, Ukraine, and Belarus. So I know for certain that some of you have actually been contacted and have been kind enough to give interviews to our researchers. And I also know that some of you are still being harassed about talking to us, so thank you in advance for agreeing to these conversations. Because, I mean, for us it's one of the few ways in which we can gather this information. So a little bit about our preliminary results. And again, I want to emphasize that this is very preliminary. If you have other ideas or if you want to challenge some of our preliminary conclusions, you're welcome to do so, and then you can talk to me also after this presentation. So, from the interviews in existing EU member states, I think perhaps the most important, and again, to you might be even trivial, but for the broader public it's important, the one thing that everyone shared is their praise for the scientific quality of the work of the partners from Moldova, Ukraine, and Belarus. We interviewed people from different areas, different projects, different substantive scientific areas, and the one common thing was that nobody complained about the scientific quality of the work. So they all had only good things to say about that. And also they all showed interest in cooperating in the future. So the experiences, whether difficult or only positive, were definitely good enough, so they wanted to cooperate with partners from these countries in the future as well. What we also noticed that a lot of the partnerships were building on existing links. So a lot of the institutes that participate in this cooperation project, they already have established links with partners from Western Europe, so recruitment into new projects already builds on existing channels, which is great if you're one of these institutions, but it also means that there is a club of usual suspects for cooperation, and then it's very hard if you're not part of this club to be noticed by Western European partners. In the case of Moldova also, a lot of these partnerships came through Romanian partners, which is perhaps understandable given the closeness of the two countries. We specifically asked about whether there was knowledge of any transfer of institutional practices from EU member states to the EAP countries, and we heard very little about that. So I can tell that my own university learned a lot from cooperating in EU projects, so all the institutional infrastructure for data management, ethics boards, all that was either invented or updated significantly to cope with the requirements, and we just learned from the EU. But I heard very little that these kind of things are happening in the EAP countries as such. Again, maybe we just don't know about it yet, so please let me know if I'm wrong, but nobody knew about such transfers of concrete institutions and technologies about managing and applying for projects. Perhaps most importantly, we heard very, very little about concrete impact on the societies and public policies in these countries. As one of our respondents put it, projects have effects, but it's very hard to talk about impact. And one concrete thing was there was very little, almost no coverage in the media of scientific cooperation projects. In our own monitoring, which covered 4 months in the 3 countries, I don't think there is a single mention of scientific cooperation and the results from projects as such. And not only that, but there were, I think we have one example from all the interviews of a concrete public policy that was adapted or changed as a result of scientific cooperation projects. And again, this is not necessarily a goal of this project, but it is a hope of the European Union that scientific cooperation can lead to broader change in public policy. Very limited impact that this happens. What is perhaps more positive news is that there was also very limited impact about the brain drain. That was one of our big expectations that we started, that EU cooperation projects might have the negative consequence of the researchers just leaving the EAP countries as a result of these projects, but again we found no evidence for this, which doesn't mean that mobility is not encouraged, but in a lot of cases people said that the people who participate are older and they're less likely to move anyways, and then for the younger people they might get training, but they also often go back to their own countries, so brain drain we didn't find so much evidence. Also, there didn't seem to be much socialization into European values and so, and this is perhaps not so surprising because the people who tend to participate are already the people who tend to have more European identity and support for European integration in the first place, so it's hard to increase from this relatively high level. So, not that the EU cooperation cannot help in fostering European values and supporting European identity, but the people who tend to participate are already scoring quite high on these. We also talked a lot about risks and barriers, and we heard much more concrete things yesterday about that. One thing that we were surprised not to find is complaints about the bureaucratic capacity of the partners from the EAP countries. And I'm not saying that because these are weak institutions, but just because I know also from personal experience that the EU projects can place a very, very high administrative burden on the participating organizations. So we thought that if it's so difficult for us, it must be even more difficult for these relatively understaffed and with limited resources organizations, but we didn't hear much about that. So there's a lot of capacity that has been developed. We have the feeling that it's isolated in small centers of excellence, so it doesn't really transfer to all institutions, but nevertheless, I think that's an important development. A few of the things that were mentioned in the Eastern Partnership countries themselves. So the main benefits, the main perceived benefits seem to be financial, of course. So projects help to pay salaries, buy equipment, fund travel, and to socialize young people into European values and so this kind of conflicts with the perspective from the West, so we have to see how it can be reconciled, but I think the difference is because perhaps it's not taken into account the self-selection process that goes into that. I think an important issue that was also mentioned yesterday is that small institutions, especially outside the capitals, complain that to be successful in new projects, you have to have capacity, but to build capacity, you have to be successful in new projects in the first place. So it's kind of a vicious circle, and for smaller institutions, it's very hard to get in the game. And then again, if policy is targeted even more towards successful institutes, towards well-producing scientists, I think this can be a mechanism to reinforce this even further. A complaint specifically in Belarus is that a lot of the institutions that are invited to participate, they're not invited as formal member of the consortia, but as contractors. So they do work and they get paid, but they don't always get the credit and just the glory, as they say, for participating in such projects. Okay. The remaining time, I want to show you a few results from our bibliographical analysis. This is based on only one of the two major bibliographical databases, Web of Science. But because our aim is not to give a complete picture of everything that has been published by scientists from Belarus, Moldova, and Ukraine, we feel that this is sufficient to have a comparable basis. So what we did is we downloaded all publications that had at least one author with an address from Moldova, Ukraine, Belarus, and some other countries that I'm going to show you from 2000 to 2016, with the hope that we can see some trends over time that differ across the countries that we studied, and that can be indicative of the impact of the EU and cooperation with the EU on the scientific output. Now, all disclaimers about publications not reflecting scientific quality and scientific productivity as such are well taken. Nevertheless, it's one way to assess that, so please bear with me. What I'm going to show you is just a set of graphs that show the developments over time. If you're interested in the details how we did that, I'll be happy to answer any questions about that. So the first graph shows you from 2008 to 2016 the publications in Web of Science. It's the Thomson Reuters database, and these have been standardized by millions of population. So these already take into account the different population sizes of the countries. As you can see, Moldova and Belarus have very similar trajectories and also very similar overall levels of scientific productivity. And Ukraine had a little bit higher levels. And please note the changing pattern, so there is not stable increase or decrease as we might have expected. And again, to some extent, this is accounted for by external factors and by changing economic conditions. So to reflect on that, the second graph shows you the number of publications standardized by the GDP level of the country, so by the wealth of the country. So it's not GDP per capita, it's the absolute wealth. So it's population and the relative wealth of the countries. And here we can actually see that Moldova is placed much higher. So comparatively speaking, given the wealth of the country, Moldova produces relatively a lot of scientific publications. And it's similar level to Ukraine, and according to this indicator, Belarus is a little bit lower. But again, we're not so much interested in the absolute levels, but in the developments over time. And I think it's pretty significant that although the level of European cooperation and participation in programs is definitely increasing over time, so you have association to a FP7 program for Moldova, for example, in 2012, and you have association into Horizon program, and it's perhaps too early to see the effects of that. But I think it's fair to say that unless we look at the very last 2 years, there is not big increase in scientific productivity when we adjust for the wealth of these countries. Again, this is just a very limited comparison, so what we might want to look at is some countries which have altogether lower level of cooperation with Europe and participation in these countries and see whether the trends there are similar or not. So again, here you have the number of publications standardized by population size, so the number of publications in Web of Science per year, per million of population for Azerbaijan and for Kazakhstan. And as you can see, actually these countries, which have relatively lower level of participation in EU programs and cooperation in projects, have actually rather steep increase in the same time period. So if anything, it doesn't seem that participation in EU programs is necessary for increasing your scientific output. Apparently there are other ways to do that as well. A final comparison is with 2 existing EU member states, and Bulgaria and Latvia, and as you can see, there can be quite some different patterns as well. So the overall level here is much higher. So the y-axis changes. It runs up to 400 publications per million now. But what is interesting is the trends, and while for Bulgaria it's pretty flat line from 2008 to 2016, Latvia experiences a very sharp increase. So even for existing new member states, different experiences might be found. Focusing on some of the countries, what we did is identify the publications that mention in the source of funding field European funding, any of the programs, FP7, Horizon, Marie Curie, any cost action, so anything that we could identify as a sign of European funding to any of the institutions participating in that publication. So if it was a co-author publication with one researcher from Moldova and another researcher from France, and the French scientists got funding from the EU, it still counts as European funding. And we did the same for Russia and the same for just bilateral German funding. And what you can see here, the blue line is EU funding, the red line is Russian funding, any of the Russian cooperation funding mentioned, and the gray line, which unfortunately you cannot see, but it's a little lower than the blue line, is the one for Germany. And I think the message here is that both EU and Russian funded publication, the share of that is growing, that it is comparable. And again, these are probably underestimates because not everyone reports their funding, but at least if they should not be systematically biased. Or if they are systematically biased, we don't know why. So I think it's fair to say that approximately the same share has Russian and EU funding, and some of them can actually have both sources of funding as well. The pattern is a little bit different when it comes to Moldova. So again, after 2012, there is an increase in the share of publications that acknowledge some form of EU funding. And in the case of Moldova, again, blue is EU funding, here red is Russian funding. The share of EU-funded publications is actually higher than the share of Russian-funded publications, which is still substantial. When it comes to Ukraine, the overall share is lower, and then Russian and EU funding is comparable and growing only very slowly over time. We also have the figures for Armenia, which in absolute numbers much, much higher than the rest. We still have to make sure that we have cleaned up the database well. But again, you can see similar shares of Russian and EU funding to publications. And then we have also for the other countries. I think Kazakhstan is interesting because this huge skyrocketing increase in scientific productivity is not driven neither by Russian nor EU funding. So there must be something else that explains that. I'm sure some people in the room know. Probably national incentives, but it's still remarkable that they have managed to get into relatively reputable high-ranking journals indexed in the Web of Science in such a short period, and the increase is amazing. Okay, I have more, but I'll stop here. As I said, this is as much as presentation of intermediate findings as a call for input from you. So I'll be most happy if you have any questions or suggestions for us. And of course, you can follow our project, and I encourage you to do so on the web, on Twitter, and on Facebook. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Question, please.
Thank you for a very interesting presentation. I have a question about one of the graphs.
Yeah.
It's a publication concerned to two countries. When you compare, if you go back, I show you, it's completely similar trends between two countries. I don't remember. Again? No, it's again. Again.
No.
No. Back.
Mm-hmm. I mean, these are all the comparisons.
Yeah, it's very interesting because the trends is very similar. How you can explain that in two countries, this publication by years is very similar? But I
I'm not sure which one you're talking about. I think some of the things we did not expect is, first of all, similar development in the Eastern Partnership countries, so in the Ukraine, Belarus, and Moldova.
This is effect to the publication.
Yeah.
By year, it's very similar. If you go back, I can show you, but.
I mean, these are all the graphs. So this is the first standardized by population, by GDP.
For example, go back, please.
Yeah.
For example, this one, Moldova and Ukraine. Yeah.
Yeah. So the question is why the trends are similar going up and down.
Yeah.
I think part of the reason why we want to have a broad range of countries is because there might be changes in Web of Science policy, so maybe they include new journals, maybe they exclude some journals, and then this would lead to common effects across all the countries. So maybe that's what we are seeing, and that's a possibility, but I don't think it's actually the case, because if you look at other countries, then you don't necessarily see the same thing. So if you look at Bulgaria, for example, there is only a very slight increase in these years. So I'm not sure. I think part of the answer can be collaborations between these countries, because you have a non-negligible share of co-publications between, for example, Moldova and Ukraine. And then, of course, this would increase the numbers for both countries because they appear in both. But it can also just be genuine trends of increasing cooperation with the EU, which happened relatively at the same time for Moldova and Ukraine. And then perhaps it's just a similar effect in both countries, but it's acting independently. So,
at least it will be interesting to analyze.
To decompose that, yeah. Now we're hoping to do that,
okay,
yeah.
More questions? We have now...
Thank you very much for a very nice, interesting presentation. I present here Azerbaijan National Academy of Sciences. I don't have questions, but I have some comments.
Yeah.
So first of all, you were totally right, mentioning that Academy of Sciences in our countries are more stronger for research. It was like it was shown in previous presentation. I think it's the same for all former Soviet republics. That we had problem with triangles like research, business, and education. But what is and you showed that publications are growing in our countries. Yeah. Maybe these are the results of, first of all, I am talking about Azerbaijan. The strategy of last years are to make this triangle and to bring together scientists, business persons, and education as well. And the second one is capacity building, of course. Yeah. So, for example, in our universities or in our research institutions, research capacity is really better now, like, in comparison with previous years. And about co-publication, yeah, we are not associated country, and we are not good. We were not good for last years to participate in EU Horizon projects, but our scientists are they participate in different projects, in different like partners, not only EU projects, but they participate in some mega projects. Yeah. So this can be also one of the results. But the another result is national funding and national research growing in our countries. Yeah. So, but the participation about the brain drain, I would say that maybe the main result, reason why brain drain is limited participating in EU programs is because being a participant of such projects makes these young people to stay in their country. They are interested. They have stimulation to work in their countries, not to go outside.
Well, thank you very much for these points.
Just a short methodological question. How many people you interviewed from the countries? How many projects you analyzed? There are running projects, finished projects, because some actions can happen late after the project ended. For example, brain drain. Yes, people can go 1 year after or 2 years after, just following the track from one specific EU-funded project.
Yeah. In Western Europe, we have approximately 10 interviews for people who have been responsible for more than 20 projects. Some of them completed, some of them ongoing, most of them recently completed. And in the East, we have 5 to 10 interviews per country, and then it differs with the number. Some of them are scientists, some of these are policy officers. So it's by no means a representative and even less of a comprehensive sample. And again, we'll be happy to hear different opinions, and we'll be most happy to collect examples of concrete impact on public policies and on society. But at least from the limited amount of evidence we have collected so far, we don't have many examples about that. Yeah.
Thank you very much
Thank you
for your presentation. Now we have 20 minutes coffee break. Please be back at 11:50. We will have a presentation on cost action, policy support facilities, and open discussions. Please keep time.
All right, thank you. So we will start our session with a presentation on cost actions. This very important, to my opinion, tool for networking, which is of particular interest for the Eastern Partnership countries and the newly associated countries in particular. So we have with us via video conference Mrs. Catalina Alfoldi, which is Policy Officer from the Coast Association in Brussels, Belgium. So Catalina, hello. I believe you can see and hear us.
Can you hear me?
Okay, we can hear you. Everything is fine with the video and the sound.
Okay.
So I think we are ready. Maybe also from your side you can see a little the meeting room here, the conference room. So Catalina, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. Thank you very much for accepting this way of contributing to your meeting. Unfortunately, it was not possible for traveling at this occasion. I don't know how much you are already familiar with cost, that I would like to a little bit introduce to you today. My plan is to explain you what cost is, what a cost action is that operates, how you can participate in it, and what benefit it might, how we see that the benefit it can give to the researchers from the Eastern Partnership countries. If you don't hear me, or if this is more difficult to follow the presentation via the Skype, just signal to me so I can go back to the slides or even slow down with the presentation. So, yeah.
Oh, please go ahead. Yeah, everything is on screen. Please go ahead.
Okay. Cost is an abbreviation. It stands for Cooperation for Science and Technology, and it actually means two things in one. One is the organization that I'm working for and that is based here in Brussels, and the other one, which is more important or more I would like to talk more about, is the cost program, the cost framework, which is providing funding for networking researchers. These are networks that are spanned from all scientific fields. All disciplines can be covered from all countries of the world, all sectors, and all stakeholders. So not only researchers, but stakeholders interested in research or needed to conduct reliable research results. Some couple of figures about costs so you could understand where we are or who we are. We are financing projects which are called cost actions, that are about 300 cost actions running parallel at the same time. These actions are using specific networking tools like training schools or short-term visits where they are funding the researchers' mobility. There are 45,000 researchers involved, more or less at the same time in the running actions, and we have 130,000 euro per cost action per year as a budget. Cost is financed from the Horizon 2020 budget. We represent roughly 0.38% of the total budget of Horizon 2020. And cost is very proud to not only count participants in its activities from the countries that are members of the association or the cost organization, but also to go beyond and to have researchers in the cost actions from all over the world joining to the activities based on a certain mutual benefit. We are also working more closer and would like to even shorten or close the cooperation with the so-called cost near neighbor countries that I will show you in a minute who they are, as we feel that cost can be a good enabler for these countries to have more, to increase their participation in Horizon 2020. Here I show you the map of cost pool members in blue and cost near neighbor countries in pink or violet. And you can clearly identify that all countries of the Eastern Partnership are so-called near neighbor country to cost. This gives a special status within our international cooperation approach, because we encourage, of course, the cost actions are open and can house participation from all countries of the world, but we feel that the near neighbor countries researchers are closer to the host member countries researchers, so the cooperation is more maybe natural, or can be can be further boosted. And what I mean by further boosted is just this is the only slide for me showing statistics, because it tries to illustrate it illustrates the margin of maneuver, or the room for improvement for the Eastern Partnership countries to get involved or get engaged with cost action. At the precise moment, we have 260 cost actions running. This is a kind of changing number depending on actions that are finishing during the year and new actions that are starting. And the countries from your countries are participating in each case in some actions, but I believe that there are still a lot of cost actions that could benefit from the expertise of the researchers from Belarus, Georgia, Moldova, Ukraine, or Armenia, Azerbaijan as well. So this is the current situation, and hopefully it can also, you can help us to change the picture, and next time I can show you a different one. I already mentioned maybe twice cost actions as a feature or as a notion. This is our project. We call our projects cost actions, and these are basically networks of researchers, engineers, or scholars that are already working in their home country as a member of a research team, or as a member of employee, or a researcher at an institution or a university in one of the countries. And these actions actually are providing a platform for collaboration. So these are at least you need to have 7 cost countries on board, and then you can join them. You can submit a proposal to the cost open call, whose next collection date will be the 7th of September. But you can also ignore the calls, let's say, and you can use another feature of these actions, that they are open and can take on board any interested and relevant partner during their lifetime following their selection. The cost actions are normally running for 4 years, and they can be covering any scientific disciplines, as they are built up bottom up. There is no prescription for topic. They are selected based on their scientific excellence and expected impact, as well as the management of the project. These are the main criteria. Additional features of the cost action is that, as I mentioned, and I would like to stress this feature, because the openness and the expandability of the actions to new participants, because I believe this is quite unique in the European research area, that you have a funded project sorry, where you not participated in preparing the proposal, but you have the right and possibility to join this project following it got funded. The actions are implemented through networking activities, which can take the form of meetings, working groups, scientific working groups, can organize conferences, workshops. They can offer short-term scientific missions up to max 3 months of being away at a different research infrastructure or research institution. They can provide training schools, and they are also can provide funding to disseminate scientific activities of the action. Here you have the average annual cost budget figure of 130,000, and of course there is a memorandum of understanding of every cost action which explains the objectives and the way how these objectives are planned to be achieved. This is a bit of repetition, but I'm happy to repeat it because this summarizes how you can participate in a cost action, or how the researchers from your countries can participate in a cost action. Of course, the participation is based on mutual benefit, but if it is ascertained, there are two main avenues to get engaged in a cost action. One is that you are member of the proposing of the team of main proposers at the proposal stage. Unfortunately, as the eligibility criterion says that there needs to be at least 7 cost countries to be eligible for submitting a proposal, but you can always join to this group of proposers as secondary proposer, and if the action and when the action gets funded, the participation from your countries will be, for your researchers, will be approved upon approval of the new project, new action. And the other avenue to join a cost action is to join a running action, where you can select the action that is most relevant from our website. This is the page on our website when you go to look to search for actions that are most relevant for you. You can have a full text search, or you can search by date. As all search engines, it's not the perfect, but I think it's a quite usable search engine. When you put your keyword or text search, you can get, if you put chemistry, you can get a list of actions. In this case, there were 102 actions found that are currently running, with chemistry being one of their main topic, or maybe using chemistry as a part of the topics. Then you can choose the action that you like the most out of the list. Then this is the screen that you will get, that will describe a little bit the action, and will give you on the under general information, will give you all the names that you can contact concerning this specific action. The action chair, the action vice chair, as well as the colleagues working here in the cost association managing this project. So you can ask any questions, and you can also send your expression of interest joining to this cost action. So this is, for example, the page for contacting with all the details of the cost action chair in this specific cost action. The decision about your participation is a two-step approach. There will be a decision at the management committee level, and that is followed by an executive board decision. That is a fast procedure, allowing in a month's time that you could have full right to participate in the action. And then I collected, I'm not a marketing manager, so it's a bit more difficult to take it from that aspect, but I try to think about what could be benefits, and I would be very happy if you can think of others, or also if you can share me what might be a hurdle for you to participate in cost in general. So what we can see from here is that, of course, when you join a cost action, you become a member of a leading scientific network, which can help you to strengthen your existing network, to open it up, or to renew it. As by becoming an action member, you also have an a la carte access to this network that are existing already, that is funded. And the a la carte access also means that, as I showed you before on our website, you can have a full overview of all the running actions. So you can choose the most relevant ones for you. And here you don't have to go through a possibly risky proposal preparation, but when you are joining directly to a funded action, you can be sure that it is an action funded and which has the financial means also to house you and to have you on board. Of course, you can participate in more cost actions at the same time, maybe with different levels of engagement, different level of involvement. You can be your national representative in the management committee as an observer, but you can also be in another cost action, only participant in a training school, if it is that is best serving your interest, subject that your country already is a participating member of that action. And by participating in a cost action, that doesn't exclude, quite the contrary, to participate in a Horizon 2020 project at the same time. Additional benefits that you can find maybe topics among the cost actions that are not yet funded by the framework program. You can be involved in only scientific and management issues, or only the management issues, as it best fits your interest or your expertise. Of course, you are eligible for reimbursement on the same rules and basis as we have for the cost member countries. A word about the cost association, so you just know who we are. This is the organization that runs the cost framework. This is the association that evaluates the proposal for new cost actions. The next one deadline is, as I said, 7th of September. But here I also would like to stress that don't only concentrate on the new deadlines for submitting proposals, but you can, by tomorrow, maybe it's a bit exaggeration, but by the fall, by the autumn, you can be member of any cost action that you choose from our website. The cost association manages the funded cost actions. It can provide information about the running actions. We can also give you first-hand information on the new actions that are being approved by your governance. The next batch of new actions will be announced at latest at the end of June, at the end of this month, and there will be 35 new actions coming out. And of course, Cost Association is ready to organize info days at the location that you feel best fits to your research community. So this is what I wanted to say in a nutshell. I would be happy to have comments. And just for an additional information that I can also send to the meeting organizer to distribute among you, that I collected the list of all participating institutions from the Eastern Partnership countries, country by country. So you can, and I think this is an additional benefit that that should have been listed, that you already have the in-house expertise about cost. So you can find the researchers from your institutions and ask them what it was good for, what it was less beneficial for, and you can learn from their experience. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Alfoldi, for this excellent overview of the way cost is functioning, and in particular the main benefits for participation in cost actions. So any questions from the floor? From my side, I would like to summarize the messages that I consider the most important. First of all, is an excellent networking tool for the researchers in Eastern Partnership, and not only, of course. Secondly, it's really bottom-up, so there are several actions running that are not linked at all to Horizon 2020. It's really bottom-up, and some scientists can set up a cost action in a field which is not deserved by Horizon 2020. And the third, which I also consider very important. It's a very light procedure for being part of a cost action. Not necessarily from the beginning, but any time except the last time of implementation of any action. So my message today, and I'm providing the same message very often in my trips in Eastern Partnership and in other countries, I really encourage the researchers to see the cost portal, to identify the actions that are close to their scientific field, and to do the necessary relatively easy steps to join an action. I really believe is an excellent tool for being part of state-of-the-art research, of state-of-the-art networks that can open many perspectives for future more concrete collaborations. So, yes, I see one request for the floor. The micro, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Katalin, for the presentation. Just a question. I fully agree with what George just stated. I put 2 slides in my yesterday presentation about the cost opportunities and great features of cost related to all that is already mentioned. Just a question for you. Is there any opportunity, and what is the precondition, what is the procedure for those countries to apply to become the full cost members, member states of cost? This is one question, and another one is related to the total number of the cost actions that are running at the moment. We are facing a kind of a reduction of the total number of the cost action in the last few years, if I'm not mistaken. We also had some years before 2 calls per year. Nowadays we have 1 call per year. Is there any news related to that, the budget will be probably increased for the cost in the future, and that we will have again 2 calls per year and more cost action that are supported by the cost association? Thank you.
Okay. Shall I take the answer, or will you take more questions?
Yes, please go ahead. Go ahead. There are several questions here already. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question, and especially for promoting costs. I think it's also thank you for helping our work. For your first question concerning membership to cost, in the statutes of the cost association, it is explained that for becoming a cost member country or full member, any European country can join that takes the European research area as its objective, and the concrete criteria are, I think, twofold. One is that the applicant country has to have been associated at least 2 consecutive framework programs, and it has to have a sufficient level of engagement already in cost actions. And the sufficient level of engagement is set at 5%, if I'm not mistaken. But the statute is available also on our website, or I can also send it to you at request. So these are mainly the most important criteria, or the criteria for becoming a full member to cost. Maybe concerning the second question on the reduction of the number of cost actions, yes, indeed, we also had, most part of the framework program were subject to budget cut due to the Juncker plan last year or late the year before, and it had an impact on the number of new actions that we could finance. The good news is that now there was the European Commission has conducted the midterm review of the financial framework, multi-annual financial framework, that resulted in some additional money to be allocated for Horizon 2020, and cost is one of the one of those sub-programs within Horizon 2020 that is rewarded to receive additional funding, which means that we will go back to the one before the Juncker plan budget cut. But it also allows us to strengthen our message and strengthen our collaboration with the near neighbor countries, because this allows the action budgets to be topped up as it was earlier the case in case of participation from near neighbor countries. So I think this is, I don't know if we will have more cost actions, but certainly we can have a less tight budget constraint, which will allow the actions to be also more flexible about how their budget is spent, and to have to involve more near neighbor country researchers into their activities. It will not be a budget question.
Thank you. Thank you for this reply. Any other question? I see none, so I would only like to thank you once more, Catalin, for this intervention, which was extremely helpful for us. So goodbye from Chişinau, Moldova, and we stay in touch. Bye, Catalin.
Thank you very much. Have a very successful meeting, and you have.
Thank you.
You also have my contact details, so those of you traveling to Brussels would have a half an hour to stop by at the post office. You are always welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Goodbye. Good. All right. So, colleagues, now I would like to invite Thierry Devar, Policy Officer from DG Research, which will will make a presentation about the Policy Support Facility, and in order to see the opportunities that exist for associated countries through this particular instrument of Horizon 2020. So, Thierry, please.
All right, so I'm going to try to give you a brief overview of the different services provided by this policy support facility, which is again fully open to not only EU member states but also countries associated to Horizon 2020. And this is, well, at least to us, probably the most important part related to the association to the program. And being associated, as we discussed, open full access to all the funding schemes of the program. But we saw that this is implemented through very, very competitive call for proposals. All of the program is, is based on this competition, and you will have to compete with countries that have been involved. The first EU framework program was launched in 1984. So you compete with countries who have more than 30 years of experience in being involved, in such EU framework. So let's be realistic. Things won't happen in one day, and that's the reason why, we have a challenge to cope with in the program, which is not to compromise a research excellence dimension, as we want to drive the countries up, not down. So we want to compromise scientific excellence, and we will continue to do so in the next framework program, in FP9. This will be the first criteria, scientific excellence. We want to fund the best. But at the same time, we need to be inclusive in order not to generate a big scientific gap in Europe. So it's very challenging. And in Europe, and I would say even in enlargement countries, the situation is quite clear, because there's an articulation between Horizon 2020 and structural funds, which allow member states to support the reform of the national research and innovation system and to modernize it up to the level of the best in Europe. Enlargement countries have access to IPA, which is instrument from pre-accessions.
And they have here resources also to launch, to have technical assistance, expertise to launch those reforms. We have a gap at the moment for neighborhood countries, like EAP countries. So what we are trying to do currently is to have an articulation between the capacity building initiative in Horizon 2020 through this policy support facility and funds from the European Neighborhood Instrument in order to support you in implementing the right reforms. So what is this PSF, this policy support facility? I mean, it's one of the main tools we have at EU level to monitor and to influence the policy reform in the field of science, technology and innovation. So beside the different economic analysis and the European semester is a framework at EU level to assess the performance of the different EU countries' economic policies and budget policies. It's a tool that has been dimensioned to provide support for policymakers to assess the situation in the country and to launch a reform to modernize the national research and innovation system. How does it work? It's the only, so it's funded through Horizon 2020, and it's the only scheme which is not based on competition. It's on a voluntary basis. It's member states, associated countries who volunteer to carry out, to request a specific service of this policy support facility. There's a call for expression interest each year in the framework of ERAC. So ERAC is the ERA committee, it's the council committee, which sets, the strategic directions among member states, to align the research and innovation policies. But of course, we are open to spontaneous requests. So if one of EU member states and one of your country volunteers to have, a PSF service, it can do it. So the next call of expression interest, as you see, is on June, is next month. So there are four main PSF services. Peer reviews of national research and innovation systems. So these are extensive review of national systems. We go through, we interview people, we make country visits in order to provide first an assessment and then key recommendations to modernize the system. There are, on the same basis, specific support on topical issues that countries would like to address. Another service is called mutual learning exercise. This is very interesting because it's a group of countries volunteering to learn together and from each other on specific issues. As you know, I will give you some example. And finally, we have a repository of all the studies, all the assessment conducted through the PSF, through what we call the RIO website. So you have the address here where you can find the different peer review which were conducted, documents related to mutual learning exercise, etc. Here you have an overview of the different PSF activities per domain that were launched since its inception in 2015. It's very small, but you will see that concerning the EAP country, we had two formal peer reviews. The first one in Moldova last year, which concluded in July last year, and one in Ukraine, which results were presented in Kiev last December. And the next one will be Georgia, who made a request for specific support. But you see that other EU countries were covered, like Latvia, Lithuania, Bulgaria, Slovenia, and Poland. So here as I said, so the country-specific support. So you have one side the PSF peer review, which are in-depth assessment of the full national research and innovation system, and it's carried out by a mix of peers in other EU member states and associated countries. Up to 5 peers, and up to 5 independent experts, coming also from EU member states and associated countries. And then we have a series of specific support to some countries. So here you have examples of some countries volunteering to have, assessment, for instance, Slovakia on framework condition for startups, Romania on innovative entrepreneurship, etc. The mutual learning exercise, here again, is very interesting. It's very innovative because it's a small club of countries deciding to work together to jointly learn about some specific issues or policies. Here there are some examples. You see, for instance, that Moldova and Armenia participate on a mutual learning exercise on open science. Moldova also volunteered to join an exercise on called performance-based funding of public research organizations. You see that we have some exercise, for instance, on R&D tax incentives, etc. So this is really an encouragement for you to check what is going on at the moment and to possibly join this kind of exercise. And you can even, of course, propose new ones. Just to be quick, I'm not going to go into the details. So, as I said, we 2 full peer review were launched. The first one in Moldova and the second one in Ukraine. The next one will be in Georgia and will be launched before the end of the year. We are finalizing the scope and terms of reference of the initiative. But just to say that, for those documents, those peer reviews are publicly available through the Rio website I mentioned. But the process, and I know George, for instance, participated to the Moldovan peer review, is a very in-depth analysis that, to volunteer for peer review, at first it's a courageous move, because you have to volunteer and to accept that people will go in the country and will put the fingers, on things that might hurt, which are the weaknesses. So it's very important that there is a political commitment, not only to launch a review, but to implement, the key outcome and recommendations. And that's what we see at the moment in the 2 countries where we conducted the reviews. In Moldova, there's now an ongoing review of the current law on science, with significant change being implemented. And it's a case also in Ukraine, where the result of the review were presented last December. So the review touched upon key issues related to the share of competitive funding, for instance, in a country to move from to set up some interinstitutional coordination mechanisms, to avoid having different bodies, having different strategies, not speaking to each other. I'm not going to speak between Ministry of Education and Science, Academy of Science, or Ministry of Economic Development, having different agendas, different priorities. The issue of rationalizing the national priorities, so the smart specialization issues that Sergiu mentioned, which is super important today. No country can address 100 research priority. You need to specialize. You need to build clusters to address those priorities. And these are the subject of of those peer reviews, which indicate best practices, concrete examples of what has been implemented and what has been successfully implemented in other EU and associated countries, and that, I believe, is the right solution. Well, so you will have, these are the three topics we are currently defining with our Georgian colleagues, and this PSF peer review should start before the end of the year. And this is a functional mailbox for the PSF. Thank you.
Of implementing the recommendations by the countries, let's say, assessed.
Okay, so again, I mean, the peer review, the PSF, okay, is not a binding exercise, okay, but it's up to the country to implement the recommendations or not. Of course, we tend to encourage the implementation. So it's possible, I mean, in the context of the PSF, to have this kind of ex post evaluation. Bulgaria, for instance, requests such.
Should be a request from the country.
Yes, it should be a request. And again, what we do to monitor the this implementation is that, of course, for instance, the three countries having an association agreement, DCFTA, with the EU, so Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia, well, we've put the implementation of the peer review in the context of the association agenda. So, which means that every year we have, monitoring of all the measures to implement the reform.
Another question, if it's possible, George.
Yes,
you foresee some kind of regional or, let's say, request from more than one country? Because if you remember, for example, Eastern Partnership Roadmap on Science and Technology, there are some key subjects which are of interest of several countries, or let's say almost all the countries. So not to do it country by country, maybe we can think about some kind of clustering on the topics which are of interest for several of us or for all of us, because we have inherited some traditions and have some challenges, common challenges.
Okay, so for peer review, this has to be country specific. I mean, for obvious reasons. Now, as I said, there is this scheme, called MLE, Mutual Learning Exercise. So you are perfectly eligible to propose, some mutual learning exercise of an issue which would be of common interest
for associated
countries.
And maybe for some new member states as well, why not?
Yeah. Yes, ERAC or ERAC is normally the formal framework, but as I said, if you write us requesting specific activity, we will take it into consideration.
Oh, it's okay. On what level the request from the country should be? Government level, ministerial level, for example, request coming from the National Academy of Sciences will be eligible or not? On the level of not the whole science and technology system, but the system of the Academy of Sciences, for example, just peer review and some recommendations.
Well, I mean, for us, we take, our counterpart is the authorities that sign the association agreement, okay? And the request should come from this body. I mean, in the case of Moldova, the request came from the Academy of Science. In the case of Ukraine, the request came from the Ministry of Education and Science. It came also from the Ministry of Education in the case of Georgia. So it's really, the the counterpart body that signs the association agreement.
No. In Moldova, Academy of Science is actually like a ministry.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, in case of Armenia, is it possible to consider if the request will come from the ministry, State Committee of Science, but on reviewing not the whole system, but the Academy of Sciences only as a, I mean, not the whole review of the whole system, but only taking the Academy of Sciences.
Well, this, I mean, would be a precedent. I mean, honestly, you know, I don't know. Well, this has to be checked.
Okay, thank you. If there is no other question, we can move on. So thank you once again, Thierry, for this presentation. And now we are entering the most difficult part of this conference, is trying to summarize, trying to find the key messages, and finally to wrap up. So I will really need your help in that, the help of all of you. And of course, if possible, also the help from Thierry in some cases. So, colleagues, from my side, I took some notes. I highlighted some items that I believe need our attention during this last session. But, of course, it's very open, and I really encourage you and invite you to add any other item you would consider important. So, to my opinion, we should, some of the items we should tackle and to see what we can propose are concerning the national contact points, the program committees, the incentives the countries could provide, and in particular the grants, the kicks and how this could be better exploited by the associated countries, the SME instrument, the cost actions. So these are few elements I believe we should highlight in our conclusions, in our recommendations. So I will start with some thoughts concerning the NCPs, the NCP system, which of course it's obvious that is a key element for a successful participation in Horizon 2020 for all the EU member states and of course for the newly associated countries. There is one model which for NCPs which first of all, there are very different models in EU member states, but certainly the model proposed by our Turkish colleague has some merit, and so the NCP should be thematic. First of all, I think you need to cover most of all the thematics before thinking about geographical coverage. If the NCPs are under one roof, this presents several advantages because there is mutual learning among them, they can share their experiences and so on. So there are some benefits in that. They should be professional to the maximum extent. I know it's not always easy, but this should be the aim. So these are some guiding principles. Of course, every country can do whatever is more appropriate for its own system, but we need to keep in mind that there are some advantages having the NCPs under one roof, having professional NCPs that will dedicate a large part of their time in doing this service, because the NCPs are, first of all, service providers. This is the main name of the NCPs, according to what we understood. And also maybe we should think about, you should think as NCPs, as Eastern Partnership countries about quality indicators that need to be developed gradually, but certainly there is a need to review from time to time how the NCP system is working, if it's efficient or not. And I think many NCPs have already developed both quantitative and qualitative indicators. They could be very simple: the number of events they organize, the number of participants in these events, the number of individual consultations, face-to-face or by telephone, the geographical coverage in their country, if they organized information activities in most of the important cities and regions and universities and so and so. So there are several indicators that could be easily developed, and I think every NCP should already start to think about that, if not done already. Then, it is of course a must to participate in support actions dedicated to NCPs. I don't know if this is already done, if there are difficulties for that. Someone has a comment about difficulties in participating in support actions for thematic NCPs? Any experiences? No? Everything works smoothly? So please.
In every country?
The bio,
or,
no. The
or do you mean support actions that
Horizon 2020
organize?
support actions for NCPs, the biocycle, okay, I don't remember the acronyms, but they are support actions dedicated to NCPs, to thematic NCPs.
Do you mean those support actions that Commission organized?
Yes.
Yeah. Can I share experience of some Ukrainian NCPs? I know at least 4 of them that are included in the network projects, not as a part of consortium, but as extended consortium member. It is my own experience also. Because I'm NCP for research infrastructures, and as I shared my knowledge with colleagues, there are Reach 2020 project that join, it seems to me, 15 or some more NCPs, and a lot of EAP countries are not consortium members, but members of extended team that join more than 30 NCPs. It allows us to take part at least twice a year in trainings, seminars, support actions.
Okay.
And I know that the same case in used the same scheme used by our NCP in energy and in Marie Curie Skłodowska action.
All right. So this is good. It's very positive. Tigran, you want to add something?
First of all, when nominating our new NCPs, always the first recommendation is be proactive and try to get into these NCP networks. But there are different networks with different support mechanisms, different financial also possibilities. There are some networks that organize trainings also for newcomers, and they cover the travel expenses. But there are networks that don't have additional money. There's a small core group of beneficiaries, mainly from EU member countries, and it's very difficult to get in. Of course, for this it's natural because there should be some experience and so to deliver all these services. But there is a possibility again to participate in some trainings, but at your own expense. So in this case, it's more difficult to get involved. And the special cases for coordinators and legal and financial, where there is this core beneficiary, there is no at all money for other associated EU member and even third country NCPs to participate. So there are 3 levels, of course, and in this case also for those NCPs where this support mechanism and the funds are not available, I think that it's also may be important to consider the possibility also to involve also especially newcomers into this training network, and also maybe also the message could go to our governments also to allocate some money also for these NCP to participate in NCP trainings also.
Okay, thank you. All right. So thank you for this insight on the situation. All right. And finally, a last question is concerning the info days. Are you organizing in your different countries info days, thematic info days under these NCP support actions? Shall we organize such info days under the EAP Plus project? Or shall we maybe think about more training for NCPs as an alternative? This is an open question, I don't know. I depend on you. So Tigran.
But maybe we can combine. I would suggest, for example, one-day event, half of the day training for the research community, and half of the day training for the SCPs or something. This kind of combination also could be.
Do you still need info days under a project funded by the INCO program? Let's say it like that. Because you have the info days under the thematics, no? You don't have it?
No.
No.
No, actually no. It's very difficult. For example, this NCP network project, it's very difficult to convince for them to organize something on in the countries also.
You can do that at the national level. It does not cost a lot, organizing an info day or not.
It's possible. But
so
anyway,
why the support from EU is needed here?
You mean
for info days?
Anyway,
you have NCPs, they are trained, they participate in this network, so they can organize the info day locally.
But there are no funds actually to support the organization of this on a national level also.
What kind of funds? You need your room in the academy and your NCP, which is staff of the academy in most of the cases.
Yeah,
no? Smira? Yeah, it's Mira and then Lydia. Yeah,
so I agree with you that NCP is the most important point to inform in awareness of the scientists in the Republic, in the country. And Info Day can be organized by you 1 or 2 times, and not everyone can join it. But if NCPs are trained very well, so they have possibility, they have chance to meet during whole year, and they can organize. We don't need so much to organize this type of meetings or seminars. So in this case, for me, training of NCPs is more beneficial than to have info days for few times per year.
Okay, thank you. Lydia? Yeah. Does not work, so louder or not.
This autumn will be published the last work program for 2018-20, and I think it will be useful to have a training in September, October for our NCPs in order to correctly present all forthcoming calls within this program. But better thing to have some experts from the Commission, for example, in December, or from the projects to participate jointly in promotion of this work program.
Sorry, can I add? But in my opinion, it wouldn't be training as simple a lecture. It would be training as training. Because one half-day lecture seems to be simply informing about the general things that we can read. And the NCP training means really get more experience in some details that we can share with our clients.
Yep. Okay.
No, I think, of course, it's important. I mean, well, this will be the last work program of Horizon 2020, so it's certainly, not to be missed. But now, training NCPs, of course, it's fundamental, but it's far from being enough. The important thing is to help you networking with, leaders in Europe who are going to submit proposals and who could include partners from your countries. So, and here we should rely on you member states, on your bilateral program activities. So if we organize this kind of info day training session, I don't know, we absolutely need representatives from member states to try to, to coach you, to try to involve you in their effort, in the promotion effort, to promote leading players, from your country in the EU network. So this would be the first thing. And the second effort, we should try to concentrate on is implication of industry and the business sector, because, so far I think it's something we are lacking. And this is important not only for Horizon 2020, but more broadly, to catch the attention of policymakers and to get funds, the funds which are lacking for your capacities. When I see the number of time where we're discussing about, travel cost or hotel cost, or the impossibility to participate because, there's no fund, to participate. Well, your policymakers have to realize the impact of research and innovation in terms of economics. And to do that, we need to involve, the private sector's industry. And this will be notably, we will organize, in the context of the panel, so the regional policy dialogue, an important event in Minsk next September, on the 21st of September, which will be focused on innovation funding, especially for innovative SMEs. And these are opportunities, to highlight, the contribution of research and innovation in terms of growth, in terms of job creation. And these are things we need to insist in order to be able to have more funds and to prioritize the sector. So if there is, an event to launch the work program 2019 and 2020, we should pay attention to involve the private sector.
Okay, so my conclusion is that we need to review what we have as activities concerning info days, concerning NCP training under the project, and to shape that maybe on a country-by-country basis, because maybe the needs and the requests are not the same, and to see what is better adapted to every country. So we will do that the next few weeks before the summer break in order to plan our activities already from September for the new work program. Okay? All right? Good. Next point. Program committees. So for the program committees, I assume that the nominations are progressing or are done already. Again, we need to think that the program committee member is providing a service to the country and to the scientific community on the specific field. He or she should see the role in that sense. Therefore, there is a need of an internal consultation of the research community. The role of the program committee member is to convey messages to and from Brussels. So these are the key functions: internal consultation and conveying the messages from and to Brussels. And despite the practical problems that exist in the reimbursement of the expenses, etc., I think we should not be blocked by that. If the program committee members are there, are nominated, they can already start their homework, start working independently of the possibility or not, or the technical problems to attend a certain meeting. But I think there is already an important field for working in the country and doing all the preparatory work. And of course, the technical problems need also to be solved one day or the other. It's a pity if a country is giving a huge amount of funds to be associated to the framework program and it cannot solve some practical and technical problems and just giving few additional funds for covering the missing parts for the missions in Brussels. So I think that this is, at the end of the day, national responsibility, and I don't think that the Commission or the project or anyone else can do something. So this is clearly a message towards the national authorities. Finally, concerning the program committee members, we envisage a workshop in next fall involving the nominated program committees from most of the newly associated countries, just to share the experiences with some from EU member states, to see how they are organizing their internal consultation, how they are doing their work in the EU member states, and how the newly nominated members should do their own homework in their respective countries. Okay? Next point, incentives. We have seen that some countries are envisaging or have already in place important incentives for their researchers. I see two sorts of incentives. There are some before the submission of an application and some others after the submission. So in Turkey, also in Armenia, they are envisaging a bonus system for the scientists that applied with a consortium and that submitted an eligible application. So they are already giving some financial support, and if this proposal is ranked, is above threshold, they are giving more, and if it's funded, they are giving even more. So this is fine, it's okay, but to my opinion, the most important are the small support before the submission of the application, because this can stimulate an increasing number of proposal preparation activities. So some countries, sorry? These grants for proposal preparation, yes, in Moldova, also in in Turkey they have it also, in Georgia you have it as well. Okay, so these grants are, to my opinion, a very important stimulus for preparation of applications, but the conditions need to be well thought, because we should not encourage the scientific tourism. We should really link the grant to a very specific proposal preparation, to a very specific call that is open and is open or will be open the next few months. And if possible, it's what we are doing under the EAP Plus project when giving such grants. We ask also the commitment of 2 scientists from EU member states, so in the same application. So it shows the degree of maturity of the applicant for such a grant, and I think that the success rate or the return can be much higher than just giving a grant for attending a conference or a brokerage event or whatever else. So I'm encouraging the associated countries to use their limited resources for this type of grants in a way that the impact will be higher. And if necessary, we can share the experiences we have in the consortium in giving these grants with the national authorities. We are here and we could just explain you what we are doing and possibly assist you in that scheme. Right? Any other comment or question about the incentives? No? Next. Cost, okay, is obvious. To my eyes, the participation of the associated countries in Eastern Partnership is very low and should go higher because it's really a tool, maybe not for Horizon 2020 anymore, but for FP9, for sure, just integrating or participating in cost actions can open large perspectives for applications in the future in FP9. So I really cannot understand why the participation is so low, because it's really open. There is large room for increasing this participation. And finally, for KICS and for the SME instrument, I'm wondering if there is room for doing something concerning these regional innovation schemes for the KICS, if we could, under the project, organize a sort of awareness campaign with your help from EIT, just to see if there is room to create a certain awareness. I don't know. We need to see with our project officer, with you, to see how this activity is envisaged from your side, and if there would be any interest for us in assisting in such awareness campaign.
Discuss with you too how we can work together. But for me, it would be more effective and efficient if we do something in the country level. Because it would be easier to mobilize the local actors.
Yeah.
So I think that this is what is necessary now, because it's different making something general.
Yeah.
Like I'm doing here. It's different working with the country.
With the country itself.
And then bringing representatives from the KICS and presenting in concrete what they do.
Did you already initiated some concrete actions under this regional innovation scheme in some countries? I don't know, in country X, EU member states, I mean.
There are already activities going on. These are some of the example activities.
Okay, so it's something which is ongoing in some countries, yeah.
And as I mentioned, there is already dedicated funding from our side of 7 million euros, about 7 million euros.
Okay.
16, 13 for 2017, and we still think that since now kids have to submit their strategies for the next 3 years for the first time, so the funding will be raised. They can apply for 1.5 million before. So this is also for activities in these countries in mobilizing and internationalizing the networks. So
Do you have any example in mind of such an awareness campaign or activity in a certain country under this scheme? Any?
you mean how we could organize that?
Yes, or something that happened recently, I don't know, in a certain country.
A very recent example is with Ukraine. It was a few months ago. I don't actually remember the local counterpart. I think it's the Academy of Science, something. It was in 2016. Exactly. So we worked with the National Academy, exactly. So our director, Martin Ken, he went there, he presented the EAT position and what you could do, but we also had participants from the KICS. So we had, it was an awareness day, but a more targeted one. So according to the participants, and this is also the important part, we don't need only researchers or representatives from higher educations. It would be good to have the whole mixture of people, because first of all, it's a very good networking opportunity for them, for themselves. It will be one of the few opportunities to get together. And secondly, they can have direct discussions with the KICS after the presentations on concrete activities, how they could proceed. I can assure you that there is already interest from some of the KICS in certain countries, but that's why I think it's better to do it in country level than doing something
Interesting. So this event in Ukraine was under this scheme of regional innovation.
We're doing general awareness days events. So that was one of the EAT RIS, Regional Innovation Scheme activities, because it's different. What we present is different. The activities that the KICS will present are tailor-made. You need a tailor-made approach according to the country. You can't do the same things everywhere. So the next one, as I said before, is in Israel in a few months. It's in July, actually. We're already in discussion with Serbia for another awareness day. So we're there. We want to support and work with you.
So we will come back to you to ask a little more about the event in Ukraine and to see maybe how we could organize something in that sense, or similar to what you intend to do in Serbia, which has more similarities than Israel.
This is an initial discussion we've had also with Victor. But it needs some planning just to be more effective, but it can happen.
Good. Any other comment or remark concerning also the SME instrument? No. I feel that is an instrument relatively difficult to be exploited by the Eastern Partnership countries. This is my feeling, but okay. Let's hope that some applications, some successful applications will appear. Yes, you have an application there, a successful application? No? No, man, no success so far. Right? Yes, please.
About the SME instrument, maybe there is one more detail that would be interesting. If there are excellent applications that don't receive money and they get the seal of excellence, so there is a new platform that was put in place called the Euroquity, like Euro Equity, and there is a community of seal of excellence companies that did not get the money, but it's a platform that can matchmake them with investors and angels and VCs. So it's, I mean, now it's exactly the time that the NCPs are spreading awareness about this. So it's good to have that in mind, even if your company did not get the money but got the seal of excellence. If someone wants to, so that's an important detail.
Good idea.
And I just have one more remark also, of course, about the NCPs. Of course, I'm with Turkey's position. We also have this thematic NCPs.
Yeah, sure.
But how you presented it, just want to add one more remark. You said that it's good to be under one roof in order to share experiences. I think maybe even more important is to give better service, as you said, because NCP is about service. And for example, as you know, I'm in the NCP team of SME. Sometimes a client comes and he needs not only me, but also the NCP of transport, also the EEN. And that's because under one roof, even not only for sharing experiences, but to give better service. If a company comes to the NCP of transport and thinks about joining a consortium, then she says, but listen, you are an SME, you have this great idea, go to my colleague, she will tell you about the SME instrument. Then I said, okay, maybe we need also partners, let's put a profile in the EEN, and one client gets service from 3 different people, and the services that he needs in one place and in one roof. That's the big advantage of having everyone under the same roof. And also we have all the program committee delegates also under the same roof, so it's super efficient like that way.
Okay, single entry point. Okay, also single roof. Okay. Interesting. Thank you. A good message for our colleagues. Yeah. All right. So I think this is all from my side. We will try to summarize that in our brief conclusion after this conference here, the next few days. We will summarize the key messages. So I think, Thierry, we can close this conference now. We will do the formal wrap-up in writing the next week. From my side, I only want to thank you for your contributions in the discussion, for the participation. I would like to very warmly thank the speakers, because the speakers and what they said is the real substance of the conference. So thank you very much for being with us and for sharing your experiences. Finally, I would like to thank our hosts once again, the Academy of Science of Moldova, Lydia, Diana, Vitali, all the people that work, and all the colleagues behind there that worked intensively in preparing this conference. So thank you very, very much. Everything was perfectly organized, and it contributed a lot to the success of this conference and to the nice time we spent in Chişinau here these 2 days. So this is all from my side. We stay in touch under the EAP Plus project to shape together the next activities. And now I will pass the floor to Thierry, maybe for his concluding remarks.
Yeah, no, just a few words also to to thank the organizer, to thank Lydia in particular, to thank also colleagues from the associated country, from Serbia, Israel, and Turkey, because sharing their experience is super precious. So thank you. And also to convey, an optimistic message. I mean, as you see, there are many opportunities, but okay, we are fully aware the entry level is quite high. So it's frustrating, and it's not because you become associated that suddenly opportunities will be granted. You have to fight for it. And that's why we need, we need believers. We need people who are visionary. To notably to reverse the brain drain issues. If you want to keep, your young elite in the countries, this is the way to go. The way to go is to fully review your national research and innovation system, to modernize them, to make them more competitive, to integrate the network. The network is that we are trying to set this dynamic in Europe, and this is now open to you. So don't be frustrated. Stay committed. It works. It will take time, but it works. That's why I'm a supporter of organizing Info Day, promotion events. Just to give you an example, we had a presentation from the EIB on Innovfin. Well, this looks, also, a very high-level scheme. Well, it works. We had 2 success deals. One first in Ukraine, 50 million euro deal for innovative SMEs company, and the second recently in Georgia. So we start to see, more application on the SME instrument. We even see more application for ERC grants. This is something we didn't talk, but there was a regional info day on ERC recently in Georgia. So, okay, we have seeds, and these seeds will grow, but we need commitment on your side, and we need you to believe in this process, and it will bear fruit. I'm sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for this positive message, Thierry. This is true. It's a process and an interesting and challenging process, and we are all committed in working on that. Lydia, please.
On behalf of the host, I would like to thank all foreign and Moldovan participants, our team which worked for organization of this event, and especially Mr. Teridivars for coming and representing DG Research and Innovation, and George Bonas, who is coordinator of YAP Plus projects. Thanks a lot, and we invite all participants to networking lunch. Finally.
Thank you, Lydia. Okay, this conference is over now. Let's go for lunch, and I'm wishing you a smooth trip back home.